Amy Elliott was standing in Elizabeth's front hallway, speaking quietly into her phone, when Wanda came in from the funeral reception carrying 2 empty coffee urns. "The kitchen photographs will need to wait," Amy said. "People are still in there." Wanda stopped with 1 urn pressed against each hip. Through the open front door, she could see the real estate sign lying face down in Amy's car. The metal post stuck out through the lowered rear window. Amy turned and saw her looking. "I was going to tell you." "Tell me what?" Amy ended the call. At 44, she had mastered the careful face she used when clients disliked what she'd already decided. She lowered her voice because Elizabeth's friends were eating ham sandwiches in the next room. "We're getting the listing ready." Wanda set the urns on the hall table. One of them left a damp ring beside the funeral home guest book. "My mother hasn't been buried an hour. The burial was this morning. The reception isn't over. I know what time it is." Amy picked up the guest book before the water reached it. She wiped the table with a folded tissue, then placed the book on a dry corner. "Patrick's coming for photographs," she said. "Exterior first. We can do the empty rooms as people leave." Wanda looked toward the kitchen. 2 women from Elizabeth's church were wrapping pound cake in foil. Zachary stood near the sink, nodding while an older man told him how dependable his grandmother had been. Wanda had heard that word 6 times since breakfast. Dependable. It was the sort of praise people gave after letting someone else do the depending. "Does Zach know?" she asked. "He's the executor." That wasn't an answer, and they both knew it. Wanda walked past Amy and into the kitchen. Her black shoes had begun rubbing the backs of her heels before the graveside service. Her hands hurt from carrying flowers, folding chairs, and her mother's weight during the final weeks. She had taken 2 pain tablets before dawn, but the stiffness was back in her fingers. Zachary saw her coming. His attention shifted immediately to the stack of paper plates beside him. "Mom, you should sit down. Did you authorize a listing?" The older man beside him gave a small nod and moved away. Zachary was 46, broad through the shoulders, with Harold Elliott's dark eyebrows and none of Harold's patience. He put both hands on the counter. "Amy's preparing it. Nothing closes today. She called a photographer, just to keep things moving. Your grandmother is still upstairs in the blue dress she picked for her funeral." His mouth tightened. "The funeral home is collecting her things tomorrow." "I know. I packed the dress. Then you understand there's a schedule." Wanda understood schedules better than either of them. For 4 years, Elizabeth had needed tablets at 7 in the morning, lunch at noon, eye drops at 2, supper before 6, and the television turned to the local news at exactly 6:30. In the last month, the schedule had narrowed to medicine, water, clean sheets, and waiting for the next breath. Wanda had kept a notebook on the kitchen counter because grief made ordinary facts slippery. Now Zachary spoke as if time had finally become valuable. "What price?" Wanda asked. Amy had followed her into the kitchen. "We're starting at $45,000. Someone dropped a fork in the dining room. The sound traveled cleanly through the sudden quiet around the 3 of them. "For the house and studio?" "It's land value," Amy said. "The place is functionally a teardown. The north wall is sound. The wiring was replaced in the kitchen. I had the foundation piers checked last spring. You had one contractor look under the porch. I paid him to replace 2 piers." Amy glanced at Zachary. That glance irritated Wanda more than the price. It told him they had discussed her already. "Mom," Zachary said, "the estate can't carry repairs. The estate hasn't carried them. I have." Wanda opened the drawer beneath the telephone and pulled out a thick envelope. She had kept receipts there with rubber bands around each year. Roofing patches, plumbing valves, furnace parts, porch boards, and the grab rail beside Elizabeth's bathtub were all recorded in her neat handwriting. She placed the envelope on the counter. Amy didn't touch it. "Maintenance doesn't establish ownership." "I didn't say it did." "You keep saying you expected to stay." "I did expect to stay." Zachary rubbed the back of his neck. "Grandma never put that in the will. She didn't need to put everything in the will for it to matter. Legally, she did." Wanda looked at her son. He had come to the house for birthdays, Thanksgiving dinners, and the occasional Sunday when Amy wanted photographs near the river. He knew which stair creaked and where Elizabeth kept the good napkins. He had not known how to lift his grandmother without hurting her shoulder. "Did you read the will?" Wanda asked. The attorney explained it. "That wasn't my question." "Yes, I read it. And I'm supposed to settle her property and divide what remains according to the instructions." "What remains after Amy takes a commission?" Amy's face colored. That's unfair. It's accurate. My fee will be disclosed like anyone else's. You aren't anyone else. You're his wife. And I'm the only agent willing to list a neglected property without asking for repairs first. Wanda held Amy's gaze. Amy wanted speed because speed kept questions from becoming inconvenient. Zachary wanted speed because each broken gutter and soft floorboard looked like a bill with his name on it. Neither of them had said anything about debt. Wanda didn't know about the overdue accounts folded inside Zachary's desk at home. She only saw a man avoiding the house because every room asked what he had failed to do. The front door opened. Cold March air moved through the rooms, carrying the damp smell of the yard. A man stepped inside with a camera case in one hand and a folded tripod in the other. He had gray hair, wire-frame glasses, and mud on the edges of his shoes. "Amy?" She went toward him quickly. "Patrick, thanks for coming." Patrick Wells glanced past her. He recognized the black clothing, the flower arrangements, and the framed photograph of Elizabeth beside the guest book. "You said the property would be clear. The reception ran longer than expected." Patrick lowered the camera case. "You're holding a funeral reception? It's winding down." He looked at Wanda. Something in her face made him stop asking Amy questions. "I'm Patrick Wells, Wanda Elliott." His expression changed. Harold's Wanda. She hadn't heard anyone call her that since her father died 8 years earlier. "You knew him?" "I worked under him when I was young, more carrying lights than taking pictures at first." Wanda shook his hand. Patrick was 62 now, but for a moment he could smell Harold's darkroom chemicals and remember being corrected for winding a cable around his elbow instead of over and under. "Then, you know the studio," Wanda said. "I knew it a long time ago." Amy picked up his camera case and handed it back to him. "We'll start outside. I need the listing active tonight." Wanda turned toward her. "You haven't even cleared the house. The contents aren't included. What happens to them? Anything Elizabeth specifically left goes where she directed. You can have the studio contents. Zach and I already agreed." Zachary came into the hallway, looking relieved to offer something. "Grandpa's equipment, cabinets, all that old stuff," he said. "You can take it? Take it where? We thought you'd want it." "The studio is attached to the house. We'll give you time to remove everything." "How much time?" Amy answered. 2 weeks should be reasonable." Wanda stared at her. The portrait studio held 40 years of her father's work. Wooden backdrops leaned behind the posing platform. Metal light stands filled one closet. The darkroom cabinet alone was wider than the hatch of Wanda's car. Amy spoke of it as though Wanda could carry the past out in grocery bags. "Elizabeth wanted me here," Wanda said. Zachary looked toward the dining room. "Can we please not do this today? You chose today. I didn't make Grandma die." "No. You only let your wife list her house before the last casserole left the kitchen." Amy lowered her voice. "This isn't helping you." Wanda felt the warning beneath the softness. She also noticed Patrick standing very still beside the door. She picked up the receipt envelope and held it against her coat. "I'll need access to inventory the studio." "You have access today," Amy said. "I live here." "Temporarily," Zachary said. He regretted the word at once. Wanda could see it, but he didn't take it back. The first guests began leaving. They hugged Wanda and told her to rest. One woman pressed a covered dish into her hands, even though it had come from Wanda's own oven. Amy waited until the last car pulled away. Then she carried the sign from her vehicle and fitted it into the metal post near the road. The whiteboard showed her name, her photograph, and a red strip reading, "New Listing." Wanda watched from the front step. Amy noticed her and straightened the sign. "The online page is live." There it was. Before the funeral flowers had begun to wilt, the house had become a property description. Zachary brought an empty suitcase down from the upstairs closet and placed it inside Wanda's bedroom door. "You should pack what you need for a few days." "Where am I going?" "Maybe a hotel while we sort things out." "With whose money?" He looked at the suitcase. "I can cover a couple of nights, and after that, we'll figure it out." Wanda set the covered dish on her dresser. The room contained her clothes, her medicine, 3 library books, Elizabeth's sewing basket, and a lamp Harold had repaired when Wanda was in college. None of it looked temporary until Zachary placed the suitcase there. From the yard came the shutter sound of Patrick's camera. Wanda removed her black funeral jacket and hung it in the closet. Then she changed into an old green cardigan and flat shoes. If they meant to turn her home into inventory, she would make her own inventory first. She took a notebook, a pencil, and the ring of studio keys from the bowl beside Elizabeth's bed. The small brass key still had Harold's paper tag tied to it with faded string. Downstairs, Amy was moving chairs out of the dining room. Zachary had gone to the hardware store, though he hadn't told Wanda why. Patrick stood outside the studio entrance, studying the warped door. "Top hinge has dropped," Wanda said. He stepped aside. "I didn't want to force it." She lifted the knob while turning the key. The lock gave with a dry click. "That's the trick," she said. It was a tiny thing, opening her father's door while Amy's new sign stood by the road. But the sound steadied her. The studio smelled of dust, old wood, and the faint mineral trace of photographic chemicals. Water had stained one corner of the ceiling. A bucket beneath it held 2 inches of brown rainwater. Wanda moved the bucket away from a stack of backdrop cloths. Patrick walked slowly past the posing stool. "He made that," he said. "He made most things he couldn't afford to buy." At the back stood the darkroom cabinet, built from maple and painted black inside. Its broad drawers had brass label frames. Patrick ran a finger across one frame and exposed Harold's handwriting beneath the dust. "Contact sheets," he read. Amy called from the doorway. "Can we clear the surfaces? I need one wide photograph before the light goes." "You can photograph around things," Wanda said. "It looks cluttered." "It is cluttered." Amy walked away, already tapping her phone. Patrick set down his camera. "I'll move only what you approve." Together, he and Wanda shifted 2 empty developing trays and a box of burned-out bulbs. Wanda wrote each item in her notebook before it moved. The work was slow because her fingers wouldn't close fully around the pencil, but Patrick waited without offering to take it from her. He pulled the upper drawer. It opened 3 inches and stopped. "That one always stuck," Wanda said. Dad would lift the corner. Patrick lifted and pulled. The drawer moved another inch. Something inside scraped against wood. He shone a small light through the gap. A loose film sleeve was caught along the right side, where no sleeve should have been. Beside it sat a narrow brass piece he didn't remember from Harold's cabinet. Patrick withdrew his hand. "I'm not opening this any farther without you seeing it." "I'm seeing it." "No," he said quietly. "I mean, before anybody moves anything." He took out his camera and photographed the half-open drawer, the trapped sleeve, and Wanda standing beside it. Then he turned the display toward her. On the visible strip of contact prints, Harold stood at the studio work table. Across from him was Wanda, younger by 10 years, accepting a folded paper from his hand. Wanda leaned closer. She remembered the afternoon, but not the camera, and not what had become of the paper. "Close the outside door," she told Patrick. He did. Wanda placed her notebook on Harold's work table, turned to a clean page, and wrote down the time. Patrick read what she had written. 3:12, he said. "That matches my camera." He photographed the page, then set his camera on the work table. From a small pocket in his case, he took a pair of thin gloves. "I keep these for dirty houses," he said. "No offense, none taken. This is a dirty room." He eased the film sleeve through the gap without pulling the drawer farther. One corner had folded against the brass piece. The sleeve came free with a soft crackle. There were 6 contact prints. Harold appeared in 4 of them. Wanda appeared in 3. She wore a light cotton blouse and stood at the end of the work table. In the clearest picture, Harold held out a folded document. His head was turned slightly toward the camera, though there was no one behind it. "Timer," Patrick said. He used one when he wanted to record his own setups. Wanda picked up the sleeve by its edges. She remembered the blouse because Elizabeth had disliked the color. She remembered bringing groceries through the studio that afternoon. Harold had called her over to the table and spoken in the low, deliberate way he used when he expected her full attention. The rest wouldn't come. "What did he give you?" Patrick asked. "I don't know." "You don't remember this?" "I remember standing here." She studied the next image. Harold's hand was empty. The paper was now in hers. "My mother called from the house," she said. "She needed help with something." "During this?" "She always needed help with something." Patrick glanced toward the connecting door. "What did you do with the paper?" "If I'd known it mattered, I'd remember." He didn't tell her that people often forgot important things. He knew importance was usually assigned afterward. Amy tried the studio door. Patrick had closed it, but not locked it. "Are you about finished?" she called through the wood. Wanda slid the sleeve into a clean paper folder from Patrick's case. We found an old contact sheet. Amy opened the door. Does it need to be in the listing? No, Patrick said. She looked from him to Wanda. Then, can we keep going? Patrick nodded toward the half-open drawer. I'm not moving that cabinet today. I didn't ask you to. You asked me to clear the surfaces. This drawer has something caught behind it, and I don't know what. Amy stepped closer. Wanda moved between her and the cabinet. It was a small movement, no more than one pace, but Amy noticed. It belongs to the estate, Amy said. You gave me the studio contents. That doesn't mean you can conceal something valuable. We don't know that it's valuable. Then there shouldn't be a problem. Patrick picked up his camera. There's a problem if people start pulling at old wood before it's documented. Amy looked at him as if he had forgotten who hired him. I need photographs, Patrick. You'll get room photographs. You won't get a stage photograph of this cabinet today. He was calm enough that she had nothing useful to push against. She turned to Wanda instead. Zach will decide what happens with anything we find. Wanda held the paper folder against her chest. She wanted to say that Zachary had never decided what happened in this house. He had waited for her to decide, then arrived after the difficult part was finished. When Elizabeth stopped driving, Wanda sold the car. When the furnace failed, Wanda found the repairman. When Harold died, Wanda chose the casket because Zachary couldn't bear to enter the showroom. She had mistaken being needed for having a place. Zach can speak to me himself, she said. Amy left the door open behind her. Patrick took 3 wide photographs without shifting anything else. He photographed the water stain, too. That roof's still leaking, he said. Only in a hard rain. It rained lightly this morning. Wanda looked into the bucket. The water line was higher than she expected. Patrick followed her gaze. That corner could come down. It won't come down today. That isn't the same as being safe. She knew it wasn't. Harold had taught her to judge water damage by color, softness, and smell. The ceiling paper had begun to sag along one seam. She pressed 2 fingers against the dry edge, then stopped when pain caught in her knuckles. Patrick pretended not to see her, flex her hand. Do you have a tarp? He asked. In the garage. Ladder? Also in the garage. He looked toward the gray sky outside. I can help before I go. You're here to take pictures. I've taken pictures. Amy hired you. Harold taught me how to print a face without making a person look dead. I can spare 20 minutes for his roof. The line almost made Wanda smile. Almost was enough to change her voice. The ladder sticks, she said. Lift the latch before you pull. The garage connected to the studio through a narrow storage room. Wanda unlocked it with another key from Harold's ring. The ladder hung on 2 hooks above a row of garden tools. Patrick lifted the latch correctly on his first attempt. You remember, Wanda said. I remember being yelled at. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. They carried the ladder outside. Wanda found the blue tarp behind Elizabeth's old lawn chairs. One corner had been chewed by mice, but the center was sound. Patrick wanted her to stay on the ground. Wanda ignored that and steadied the ladder while he climbed. She told him where the roof dipped and where the old patch ended. He laid the tarp over the weak section, then handed down a rope. Not the gutter, Wanda said. It'll pull loose. Tie it to the vent base. He changed the knot without argument. From the kitchen window, Amy watched them. She had expected Wanda to be overwhelmed by the rooms, the funeral, and the practical problem of where to sleep. Instead, Wanda stood in wet grass directing a repair. Amy didn't think of it as competence. She thought of it as delay. Zachary returned while Patrick was coming down. He carried a paper bag from the hardware store and 2 boxes marked with pictures of door locks. Wanda saw the boxes before he reached the porch. What are those for? Standard estate procedure, changing the locks? We need to control access. I'm living here. Mom, we just discussed this. No. You told me to pack. Zachary set the boxes on the porch rail. The attorney said, I'm responsible for securing the property. From whom? Everybody. Name one person. He looked at Patrick. Patrick folded the ladder. Don't use me to avoid answering her. Zachary's face hardened. This is a family matter. I was leaving. Patrick carried the ladder back to the garage. Before he closed his camera case, he placed the folder containing the film sleeve in Wanda's hands. You should keep this somewhere dry. Amy came down the porch steps. It stays with the property. Patrick didn't release the folder. You told her she could have the studio contents, he said. We don't have a written inventory. You have photographs taken at 3:12 this afternoon. They show exactly where it came from. Amy's attention moved to the camera. Patrick zipped the case. The image files preserved their time information. I also photographed Wanda's note. If anyone asks later, I'll say what I saw. Nobody spoke for a moment. Wanda accepted the folder. It was the first thing recovered from the studio, and it weighed almost nothing. Patrick gave her his business card. Call me before you open that drawer farther. I'd like to be present. Why? Because Harold built it differently from the other cabinets. What do you mean differently? I don't know yet. He looked toward the garage, where the cabinet stood beyond two closed doors. There was no reason for that brass piece to be beside the drawer track. Amy heard him. So did Zachary. The drawer had become important simply because Patrick had refused to guess. He left after promising to send the listing photographs directly to Amy. She watched his car turn onto Cedar Mill Road, then held out her hand to Wanda. I need the folder. No, Zach is executor of Elizabeth's estate. The cabinet was in Elizabeth's house. The cabinet was in Harold's studio, and you gave me its contents in front of two witnesses. Amy turned. Zach? He picked up one of the lock boxes. Let's not fight over old pictures. Wanda waited for him to tell Amy to leave the folder alone. He did not. I'm going upstairs to pack, she said. Relief crossed his face. He bent to open the first lockbox. Wanda went through the kitchen and paused beside the telephone drawer. The receipt envelope was still under her arm. She took out the years of bills and spread them across the table. There were more than she remembered. She had paid for repairs in small amounts because small amounts didn't frighten Elizabeth. 100 for a valve, 300 for porch lumber, 50 for furnace service. Every receipt carried Wanda's name, but the checks had come from the same modest savings account she now needed for lodging. She added the most recent ones in the margin of her notebook. The total wasn't enough to establish a claim to the house. Amy had been right about that. It was enough to show Wanda how long she had been paying to remain useful in a place where nothing had been promised to her. Elizabeth had once said, "This will always be your home." Wanda had treated that sentence like a legal fact, because asking for more would have sounded distrustful. She had avoided upsetting her mother. She had avoided embarrassing her son. She had covered costs quietly so nobody would accuse her of making care about money. Now the locks were being changed quietly too. Upstairs, the suitcase waited beside her bed. Wanda packed underwear, 2 blouses, her nightgown, pain tablets, and the green folder containing her medical papers. She added Harold's contact prints between 2 library books so they wouldn't bend. She opened the closet for her winter coat and found Elizabeth's blue dress hanging at the far end. The funeral home had returned it because a seam had torn while they were dressing her. Wanda touched the sleeve, then removed her hand. Zachary called from below. "Mom, which keys do you have?" She placed Harold's ring in her cardigan pocket. "The front door and studio. I need the front door key. You're replacing the lock. I still need to account for it." She brought him the house key. He stood on the porch with a screwdriver while Amy read instructions from the box. The old brass lock lay on the top step. Zachary held out his hand. Wanda placed the key in it. "You can stay tonight," he said. "We won't make you leave after dark." "We?" "You know what I mean." "No, I don't," he exhaled. "I mean, nobody wants you put out on the road." "Then stop changing the lock." "I can't do that. Can't or won't." He looked at the screwdriver. "The house has to be secured." Wanda nodded once. "Finish it." She returned upstairs and packed slowly. She kept waiting for Zachary to come after her. He had done that all his life. He let Wanda absorb his sharp words, then appeared later with coffee or a small repair, offering kindness without naming what caused the damage. He didn't come. By evening, Amy had gone home. Zachary stood in the front hall with one new key on a plain steel ring. "I'll keep this for now," he said. "Call before you come back for the rest. I'm still here tonight. The back door locks from inside. And tomorrow, we'll talk in the morning." He kissed Wanda's cheek. His lips barely touched her skin. After his car left, she tried the front lock. The new key turned smoothly from inside. She had no key to turn it from outside. Rain began after 9. It tapped the kitchen windows, then strengthened against the roof. Wanda carried the suitcase downstairs but didn't take it to the porch. Instead, she crossed the storage room and entered the studio. Water drummed above the tarp. The bucket remained nearly dry. Patrick's temporary repair was holding. She checked the connecting door between the studio and house. It had an old bolt on the studio side. Harold had installed it years ago to keep chemical fumes out of the kitchen. Wanda slid the bolt closed. Then she set the suitcase beside the posing stool, took the studio key from Harold's ring, and tested it in the outside door. The lock turned easily beneath her hand. They had left her one entrance because they believed it led nowhere worth keeping. She left it locked, went back through the storage room, and worked until nearly midnight. She numbered the cabinets, shelves, light stands, chairs, backdrops, and boxes of paper. She didn't decide what was worth keeping. That would come later. For now, she recorded where everything stood before someone moved it. At the darkroom cabinet, she wrote down the wording on each brass label frame: contact sheets, enlarging paper, filters, accounts. Harold's handwriting changed slightly from one label to the next. Some had been written when his hand was steady. Others leaned downhill. The upper drawer remained open 4 inches. Wanda measured the opening with the short ruler she found in Harold's pencil cup. She didn't touch the brass piece. Then she drew the front of the cabinet in her notebook and marked where the sleeve had been caught. At 11:30, she returned to the house. She left the connecting door bolted and slept in her clothes on top of her bedspread. The suitcase stayed packed beside her. Zachary arrived at 7 the next morning, carrying 2 coffees and a paper bag. I brought breakfast. Wanda was already in the kitchen, washing Elizabeth's medicine cups before packing them away. She set the last cup on a towel. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "Some." He placed 1 coffee near her. Egg biscuit, no cheese. He remembered that cheese upset her stomach. This was how he came back after hurting her, with 1 correct detail and no reference to the hurt. Wanda opened the bag but didn't take out the biscuit. "When will the utilities be transferred?" she asked. He blinked. "What?" "The electricity, water, and gas. When are you shutting them off?" "I haven't decided." "Then decide before you leave. We're not shutting off everything." "Amy says the house needs power for showings." "Under whose name?" "The estate's, I guess." "You guess?" "I'll call." Wanda picked up the coffee. It was too hot to drink. "What does the listing say about the studio contents? You're still on that?" "Yes. It says the property is sold as is." "That doesn't answer me." He took out his phone. "I haven't read every word Amy wrote. You signed the brokerage agreement? She sent it while I was at the funeral home. And you signed it without reading it." "I looked through it." "Show me the listing." He held the phone but didn't unlock it. "Mom, what exactly are you trying to do?" "I'm trying to know what you're selling. It's Grandma's house. And the studio contents are mine. That was your decision yesterday. I said you could take Grandpa's equipment. You said all of it." "Fine, all of it, within reason." Wanda heard the change. Yesterday it had been a gift he didn't value. This morning, it required limits. "Show me the listing," she repeated. "Amy handles that." Zachary picked up his coffee and walked toward the front hall. Wanda didn't follow him. She took Patrick's card from her cardigan pocket and called the number. He answered on the 4th ring. "Wells." "It's Wanda Elliott. I thought you might call. Do you have the listing page? I have the link Amy sent after it went live. Would you read me what it says about the contents?" Zachary stopped near the front door. Patrick was silent for a moment. She heard keys clicking. "It says, property offered as is, including attached former portrait studio and remaining fixtures, equipment, and contents at seller's discretion." Wanda wrote the sentence in her notebook. "Does it say the house is occupied?" Another pause. "It says vacant possession available at closing." What does that mean in ordinary English? "It means the buyer expects nobody to be living there when the sale finishes." Zachary turned around. "Give me the phone." Wanda stepped away. "Patrick, can you save the page as it appears this morning?" "Yes." "And the time?" "Yes, thank you." She ended the call. Zachary put his coffee down too hard. A little spilled through the lid. "You're making this into something it isn't. The listing includes contents you gave me, at seller's discretion. That can mean we exclude them. It can also mean you don't. You have 2 weeks. Do I?" "I told you that." Amy didn't put it in writing. He stared at her. He had expected the coffee and biscuit to restore the old pattern. Wanda was supposed to recognize his good intention and spare him the discomfort of a clear answer. "I'll talk to her," he said. "No. Write down that the studio contents are mine and that I have 2 weeks to remove or secure them. I'm not drafting a contract at breakfast. Then I'm not relying on breakfast." His face changed. For the first time since the funeral, he looked less irritated than uncertain. "I have work," he said. "So do I." He took the new front door key from his pocket and set it briefly on the table while wiping the spilled coffee. Wanda saw the plain steel ring beside the napkin. "Leave me a key." "I can't." "You can. You don't want to. I'm responsible for the property. I'm responsible for my belongings inside it. I said call me. If my hands swell at night and I need my medicine, should I call you from the yard? You're taking your medicine with you. That isn't the point." He picked up the key. Wanda had spent years making his avoidance easier. When he forgot Elizabeth's appointment, Wanda told her the clinic had changed the time. When he promised to repair the porch and didn't come, Wanda did the work and told him the boards weren't as bad as she'd thought. She had protected his place in the family by hiding the spaces where he was absent. Now he believed absence carried no cost, because she had always paid it. "I won't ask you again this morning," she said. He nodded, relieved too soon. "I'm documenting the studio before anything leaves. Patrick will be there." "Why Patrick?" "Because he knows the equipment and because he already saw the drawer." Zachary glanced toward the connecting room. "What's in it?" "We don't know." "Then don't damage it." Wanda almost laughed. "That's why I called someone who knows what he's looking at." Zachary left with both coffees, including hers. The egg biscuit remained on the table. Patrick arrived shortly after 9. He carried his camera case, a measuring tape, and a flat box of archival sleeves. "I brought better protection for the contact sheet," he said. Wanda showed him the saved listing on her own phone. Patrick had sent it by message, along with a photograph of the page and its posted time. "She changed one line already," Wanda said. "What line?" "It said, 'Contents included' when you read it to me. Now it says, 'Contents negotiable.'" Patrick compared the image on his camera with the current page. "You're right. Can she change it without showing the earlier version? Online listings change all the time. That wasn't my question." "No," he said, "but I can only prove what I photographed." It wasn't much, yet it was something Amy couldn't smooth away with a calm voice. Wanda printed the saved page on Elizabeth's old inkjet printer. The black letters came out faint, and a red warning light blinked for low ink. She wrote the date and time across the bottom, then placed it with the repair receipts. Patrick waited in the studio while she carried in the egg biscuit and 2 cups of tea. She divided the biscuit with a table knife. "You don't have to feed me," he said. "I'm hungry, and there's one." They ate at Harold's work table. Rain tapped lightly on the tarp overhead, but nothing fell into the bucket. "What do you remember about the day in those pictures?" Patrick asked. "Dad told me to come into the studio." He'd set the camera on the tall tripod. "Did that strike you as odd?" "He photographed everything." "Not everything." Wanda waited. "He didn't photograph paperwork unless it mattered to a job," Patrick said. "Model releases, insurance records, deliveries from clients. Things he might need to prove later." "What kind of delivery?" "I don't know. You have an idea. I have several, and guessing would be careless." She appreciated the refusal. Her family had produced too many conclusions from convenience. Patrick slipped the contact sheet into a new sleeve. Along the lower edge of the film, tiny numbers marked the frames. He turned it beneath the work lamp. "There should be negatives matching these." "Where?" Harold filed them by job number. "There's no job number on the sleeve. That's the inconsistency." He showed her the label area. Harold had written only one word in pencil. "Delivered," no name followed it, no client number, no date. Wanda touched the edge of the table. "He said something to me that afternoon," she said. "He told me not to let anyone rush Elizabeth out of the house." "Anyone in particular?" "He didn't name anyone." "What did you say?" "I told him nobody was trying." She remembered Harold looking past her toward the kitchen door. Elizabeth had been upset because one of her relatives had brought up selling. Wanda couldn't recall who had started it. There had been several conversations near the end of Harold's life, always disguised as concern about upkeep. "What happened after he handed you the paper?" Patrick asked. "My mother called. She dropped a jar in the pantry. You left?" "I put the paper on the table and went inside." "Did you come back?" Wanda looked at the photograph again. "I must have. That isn't remembering." "No?" It bothered her more than she expected. She had responded to Elizabeth so automatically that an entire exchange with Harold had disappeared behind a broken jar. Patrick moved to the darkroom cabinet. "Let's learn what we can without forcing it." They photographed the drawer from every angle. Then Wanda held the tape while Patrick measured the cabinet's outside depth. 26 inches, she said. He measured the interior depth of the drawer through the narrow opening. 21 3/4. Allow for the back panel. An inch, maybe a little more. Not 4. No. They checked the drawer beneath it. That drawer reached almost to the cabinet's rear wall. Patrick crouched and shone his light through the upper gap. The sides aren't parallel, meaning the inside box narrows toward the back. Harold built space behind it. For what? I still don't know. Wanda looked at the brass piece. It wasn't part of the slide. It had been mounted deliberately, then concealed when the drawer was closed. Can we open it? Probably. Today? Patrick pressed gently on the cabinet's side, then stopped. The wood shifted against the floor. Not safely while it's leaning like this. The back foot has sunk into the flooring. Wanda knelt despite her knees protesting. The linoleum beneath the cabinet was dark and soft. Water had traveled farther from the leaking corner than the ceiling stain suggested. If we pulled the drawer, the cabinet could twist, Patrick said. If there's glass film inside, it could crack. If there's paper, the damp may already be reaching it. Wanda stood slowly. What do we need? A dry floor, level supports, and time. Her phone rang. Amy's name appeared. Wanda answered. I have a showing tomorrow afternoon, Amy said. The buyer wants to see the studio. The studio isn't ready. It doesn't need to be ready. They're looking at the structure. No one enters without me. You don't control access. I control my belongings. Amy paused. Then be here at 2. The call ended. Patrick looked at the softened floor beneath the cabinet. Wanda closed her notebook. We have until 2 tomorrow, she said. Help me make this cabinet safe. Patrick nodded and lifted the bottom edge of the cabinet. Slide the plywood under when I tell you. Wanda had found a half sheet behind the garage workbench. She cut it into squares with Harold's old handsaw, using slow strokes because pressure made her fingers burn. The first cut wandered. The second was straight. Patrick held the cabinet while Wanda pushed a square beneath the sunken foot. The wood settled with a low creak. Again, he said. They added a second square and checked the cabinet with a spirit level. It still leaned toward the damp corner. Front left needs 1/8 of an inch, Wanda said. Patrick looked at the bubble. I would have said 1/4. 1/4 will throw the drawers. He gave her the thin wooden shims. She tapped one beneath the foot with the handle of a screwdriver. The bubble moved to center. Your father used to make me level the enlarger table every Monday, Patrick said. Did the floor change every week? No. He said I did. Wanda tested the cabinet with both hands. It no longer shifted. The work had taken more than an hour. Her knuckles were swollen, and a sore place had opened beneath her right thumb. She wrapped it with a strip of clean cloth rather than stop. Patrick moved the bucket beneath a new drip. We should deal with the roof before another hard rain. One problem at a time. That usually means the next problem gets wet. She looked up at the sagging ceiling. Then we'll make this one quick. They cleared the work table and spread a clean cotton sheet across it. Patrick set his camera on the tripod and aimed it at the cabinet. Wanda placed the saved listing page and her notebook out of the frame. She wanted a clean record of the drawer, not a family argument in the background. Ready? He asked. No. He waited. Wanda opened and closed her right hand. Harold had made the cabinet in that room. She had watched him fit the drawer fronts at the table where she now stood. If the brass piece opened something he had meant to keep closed, she wanted to be certain she wasn't doing it from panic. Now, she said. Patrick began recording. Wanda lifted the drawer's right corner the way she had seen Harold do. Patrick pulled from the center. The drawer moved another 2 inches, then caught. Don't force it, she said. I'm not. She shone the light inside. With the film sleeve removed, the brass piece was easier to see. It lay nearly flush against the right side, shaped like a narrow thumb latch. There's a notch underneath, she said. Patrick changed the camera angle. Can you reach it? Not with this hand. She tried her left. Her fingertips brushed the brass, but couldn't press it far enough. Patrick offered a wooden developing tong from the tray. No metal against it. Wanda fitted the end of the tong beneath the notch. Toward you, Patrick said. Gently. She drew the brass piece forward. Something clicked behind the drawer. Neither of them moved. That wasn't the slide, Patrick said. Wanda released the pressure. The brass returned to its original position. Again, yes. She pulled it a second time while Patrick eased the drawer outward. This time, the drawer came free. The back was shallower than the sides. A false panel formed the last 4 inches of the drawer box. Harold had painted it the same dull black as the interior. Patrick stopped the recording only long enough to reposition the tripod above the work table. Wanda ran one finger along the panel edge. No handle. The brass latch released it. Then, how does it open? Patrick examined the corners without touching them. It may slide upward. Wanda lifted the panel. It rose half an inch, then tilted forward. Behind it was a narrow cavity wrapped in black waxed cloth. Wanda sat down on the posing stool. Patrick looked at her. "Do you want to stop?" "No, you're pale. I haven't eaten enough." He brought her tea from the work table. It had gone cold. She drank it anyway. The bundle fit tightly inside the cavity. Patrick photographed it before Wanda lifted it out. The waxed cloth had been folded around 3 flat packets and tied with cotton tape. Harold had written Wanda's name across the tape. She recognized the heavy downward stroke of the W. Patrick stepped back. "That's yours to open." Wanda untied the tape. The first packet held a folded document inside a clear protective sleeve. At the top, in large formal print, were the words, "General Warranty Deed." She read the first lines twice without understanding them. Harold Elliott was named as the grantor. Wanda Elliott was named as the grantee. Below that came a description of the property at Cedar Mill Road. Patrick remained behind the camera. "What does it say?" he asked. "I don't know yet." She moved closer to the work lamp. The wording was dense, but one sentence was plain enough. Harold had conveyed the property to Wanda, while reserving Elizabeth's right to occupy and use it for the rest of her life. Wanda read that part aloud. Patrick lowered the camera. "So, Harold gave you the house. It says he did. That's not the same?" "I don't know." The paper carried Harold's signature and a notarial seal. A date appeared near the bottom. It was the same year as the contact prints. Wanda remembered more of that afternoon. Harold had told her the paper protected Elizabeth without leaving the house open to pressure. He had asked Wanda to put it somewhere safe. Then Elizabeth called from the pantry. Wanda had left the document on the work table. When she returned, Harold was helping Elizabeth sweep broken glass into a dustpan. Wanda asked about the paper. He told her he had taken care of it. She assumed he meant he had filed it with the other household records. "Why hide the original after giving it to me?" she said. Patrick glanced at the remaining packets. "Maybe he explains it." The second packet held a thick stack of index sheets. Each line contained a date, a subject, a frame count, and a storage code. Some subjects were ordinary studio work: weddings, store openings, retirement portraits, river workers, school staff, flood cleanup. Others reached much farther back: Main Street storefronts before renovation, riverfront buildings since demolished, factory shifts, rail crews, church interiors, family businesses whose signs no longer existed. Patrick read one page and pulled out the chair across from Wanda. "I remember some of these negatives. Where are they?" The storage codes point to boxes: H for hallway cabinet, D for dark room, probably S for shelves. There are hundreds of entries, more than hundreds. He turned to the last page. Harold had signed and dated the index beneath a sentence stating that the catalog represented his original photographic work and identified where the matching negatives were stored. Wanda had known her father kept nearly everything. She hadn't known he had organized it. "What are they worth?" she asked. "I can't tell you." "Nothing? A little?" "I can tell you they shouldn't be thrown away. That's what you can tell me about every object in this room." "No. Some of those light stands are scrap." She gave him a tired look. Patrick touched the edge of the index. "This needs someone who knows archives and licensing, not a used camera dealer." The third packet contained one sheet of Harold's cream stationery. Wanda unfolded it. He had addressed it to her. The letter was short. Harold wrote that Elizabeth had been frightened by repeated talk of selling. Relatives called the place a burden and insisted she would be better somewhere easier. He believed pressure would increase after his death. He had given the deed to Wanda in the studio and photographed the delivery because he wanted a record of it. When Elizabeth interrupted them, he took the document back for safekeeping. He hid it with the catalog until Wanda needed both. He ended by asking her to keep the house useful, not frozen. There was no affectionate closing. Harold had never used many words when a clear instruction would do. Wanda folded the letter along its old crease. "Who pressured Elizabeth?" Patrick asked. He didn't say. "Do you know? Different people talked about selling. My mother's cousin once. Zach mentioned maintenance after Dad died. Amy brought an agent's estimate 2 years ago. but Elizabeth refused to look at it. Did Harold know Amy then? He knew her. Patrick didn't ask more. The letter wasn't proof of who had applied pressure, and Wanda wasn't going to turn suspicion into fact. Her phone showed 1:30. "We need to secure these before Amy arrives," she said. Patrick returned the deed, index, and letter to their separate packets. He photographed every outside surface but did not photograph the full text. Wanda wrote a simple inventory and signed it. Patrick added his name beneath hers as the person present. "What about the drawer?" he asked. "Leave it open. That exposes the cavity. It also shows we didn't damage the cabinet." They placed the packets inside Patrick's flat archival box. Wanda hesitated before closing it. "I can't keep this in the house," she said. "Where's your bank box?" "I don't have one." "Attorney?" "Not one I trust yet." Patrick looked toward the outside door. "I have a fire cabinet at my studio." Wanda shook her head. "If it leaves with you, Amy will say you took estate property. She may say that anyway. I need somewhere I control." She thought of her suitcase. It was portable, obvious, and had no lock. Then she looked at the base of the posing platform. Harold had built a shallow equipment compartment beneath it. The compartment wasn't hidden. It had a normal keyed lock and was listed in Wanda's inventory. She unlocked it and removed 2 sandbags. The archival box fit behind them. "It stays here until I arrange proper storage," she said. Patrick photographed the box going into the compartment. Wanda locked it and placed that key on Harold's ring. At 2, Amy entered the studio without knocking. Zachary followed her. Through the open outer door, Wanda could see a dark pickup waiting near the road. "The buyer's early," Amy said. "Why is that drawer out?" "We stabilized the cabinet and inspected it." Amy noticed the open false panel. What was in there? Documents and an index. "What documents?" "One appears to be a deed from my father." Zachary took a step forward. "A deed to what?" "The house." The color left Amy's face, then returned quickly. "Let me see it." "Not yet. If it was hidden in this property, it belongs to the estate until the estate's attorney reviews it. The name on it is mine. That doesn't make it valid." "I know." Amy hadn't expected that answer. She had expected Wanda to claim victory too early, giving her something easy to dismiss. Zachary looked at the empty cavity. "Why would Grandpa hide a deed?" "He left a letter." "What does it say?" "That he delivered the deed to me and kept it safe after I was interrupted." "By Grandma?" "Yes." Zachary pressed both palms against his thighs. He looked toward the house, then back at Wanda. "Where is it?" "Secured. I'm executor. I need to see it." "You'll see a copy after I have the original examined." Amy's voice sharpened. "You can't remove estate records. Nothing has left the studio. Then hand them over." "No." The words sat plainly between them. The buyer's truck door opened outside. Amy glanced toward it. Her listing, her commission, and her confident promise of vacant possession were waiting in the driveway. She lowered her voice. "Wanda, if you interfere with this showing, you could cost the estate a sale. If that deed is valid, there is no estate sale to cost." Zachary looked at his mother as though she had moved somewhere he couldn't reach with coffee or an apology he never spoke. Amy walked to the outer door and raised one hand toward the waiting buyer. "Give me 10 minutes, she called. Then she closed the door and turned the lock. "All right," she said. "Nobody sees the studio until we settle what you found." Wanda didn't raise her voice. "Unlock that door." "We need privacy," Amy said. "The person outside is your client, not mine. You don't lock me in a room." Patrick moved toward the door, but Wanda reached it first. She turned the lock and opened it. The man by the truck had stepped into the yard. Amy went outside to meet him before he reached the studio. She spoke with him near the listing sign, smiling and pointing toward the house as if the delay had been planned. Zachary stayed behind. "Can I see the paper?" he asked. "When I have a copy." "You trust Patrick with it, but not me." Patrick stopped when he found something he didn't understand. "That's a cheap shot. It's an answer." He looked at the open drawer. "If Grandpa meant you to have the house, why didn't you know?" "I'm trying to find that out. Maybe there's a reason." "There is." "I left the paper on the table when your grandmother called me. That doesn't explain why he hid it." "No, his letter does." Zachary paced to the window. Amy was leading the buyer toward the front porch. "I can't just stop doing my job because you found an old document. I didn't ask you to stop. I asked you not to sell something until we know whose it is. I have an attorney. Then have him explain how to deal with a disputed deed. He'll need the original. He'll get a copy. Zachary turned. You always do this. Do what? Decide you're the only person who will handle something correctly. Wanda felt the accusation because it wasn't entirely false. When did you last ask to handle something? She said. His mouth opened, but Amy called his name from the house. He left without answering. Patrick closed the false panel and returned the drawer to the cabinet without engaging the latch. It remained open far enough to show it had been inspected. You all right? He asked. No. Good. I'd worry if you were. Wanda sat at the work table and opened her notebook. She wrote that Amy had requested the documents and that Wanda had refused until copies were made. Then she recorded that the showing continued without access to the studio. Patrick watched her underline the time. What's the new objective? He asked. Find out whether the catalog describes anything that still exists. That could take weeks. We have storage codes and hundreds of entries. We don't need hundreds today. We need one. Patrick smiled slightly. That sounds like Harold. They started with the first sheet. The earliest surviving entry carried an H code, followed by a cabinet number and a box number. Wanda found the matching hallway cabinet beside the connecting door. The cabinet was locked. She tried every small key on Harold's ring. None fit. Patrick examined the lock. Simple cabinet latch. The key may be in the accounts drawer. That drawer's stuck too. They opened it by lifting the front left corner. Inside were envelopes, blank receipt books, and a shallow wooden tray. Beneath the tray, Wanda found 5 keys tied together with cotton string. One opened the hallway cabinet. The door released a smell of damp cardboard. 3 shelves held gray archival boxes with handwritten numbers. The bottom shelf had taken water. Its boxes were dark along the edges and soft at the corners. Patrick crouched, but didn't pull one out. Gloves, he said. They put on clean pairs. Wanda read the first code again, while Patrick located the box on the middle shelf. It was dry. He carried it to the work table and removed the lid. Inside, paper envelopes stood upright in rows. Each envelope carried the same kind of code shown in the index. Patrick selected the first one and held it beneath the lamp. Glass negative, he said. Don't tip it. He slid the plate halfway out. A black and white image shimmered across the glass. It showed a row of riverfront buildings, several of them long gone. Men stood beside delivery trucks, and signs filled the windows. Patrick checked the index. The date and frame count match. 1 box, Wanda said. 1 box is enough to prove the system works. He photographed the envelope beside the catalog entry. Then he photographed the plate without removing it fully. Wanda looked at the lower shelf. What about those? They're wet. Can they be saved? Some, probably. Not by leaving them there. They removed the damp boxes one at a time and placed them on folding tables away from the wall. Water had reached the outer cartons, but not every envelope inside. Wanda noted each number while Patrick checked for stuck paper and cracked glass. By the 4th box, her hands had begun to shake. She tried to hide it by holding the pencil with both hands. Patrick took the notebook from her. You call the numbers. I'll write. I can write. I know. She let him. That small surrender cost more than it should have. Wanda had spent so long proving usefulness through labor that accepting help felt like admitting she had less claim to the work. But her father's negatives didn't need proof of her endurance. They needed steady hands. They were halfway through the lower shelf when Amy returned. The buyer made an offer, she said from the doorway. Zachary stood behind her, holding several pages. At the asking price? Wanda asked. Yes. No financing, short inspection. They want the remaining contents removed or included. When does the offer expire? Noon tomorrow. The deadline was meant to sound like success. Amy's eyes went instead to the gray boxes spread across the tables. What are those? Negatives, Patrick said. From the cabinet, from the hallway storage. Why have you moved them? The bottom shelf is wet. Amy entered and lifted the lid of the nearest box. Patrick closed it beneath her hand. Please don't handle those without gloves, she drew back. They've been sitting in a wet cabinet for years. The cardboard is wet. The plates are not all damaged. You can't know that without inspecting everyone. That's what we're doing. Amy looked at the index on the work table. Was that in the hidden space? Yes, Wanda said. And it identifies these? Yes. Amy turned to Zachary. Then they weren't random junk. They were stored as a collection. Wanda heard the shift. Amy no longer wanted the equipment cleared. She wanted it classified as the part of the property. "You told me the contents were mine," Wanda said. "I told you that before we knew they might have value. You called them unwanted equipment. I was trying to be generous." "No, you were trying to save the cleanout cost." Zachary unfolded the pages. "Can we stay focused? The attorney says we should preserve everything until ownership is sorted out." "Everything?" Wanda asked. "The deed, the catalog, and the negatives. Preserving them requires moving wet boxes." "That's fine. To where?" He looked around the studio. Patrick pointed to the sagging ceiling. "Not here unless you fix the roof and dry the floor." Amy folded her arms. "The buyer plans to tear the structure down." "The buyer doesn't own it," Wanda said. "The buyer may own it soon, not before the deed is examined. The offer can be accepted subject to clear title." Wanda looked at Zachary. "Is that what you're planning?" "I'm considering it. If you sign, you'll create a fight you don't need. If I don't sign and your document is worthless, the estate loses a clean offer, then ask for more time. The buyer gave us until noon. You gave the buyer a listing before you knew what you were selling." Amy stepped between them. "We're not declining an offer because Patrick found old photographs." Patrick kept his voice even. "I found a documented catalog that matches at least one original negative." "One," Amy said. "One is what we checked. Does that make it valuable? It makes it organized." "That wasn't my question." Patrick looked at Wanda. "There's someone who can answer better than I can." "Who?" Amy asked. "Francis Perry." Wanda knew the name. Francis had managed Harold's studio before Elizabeth's health began demanding more of his time. She had left Hannibal years ago, but sent Elizabeth a Christmas card every December. "Is she still working?" Wanda asked. "She handles acquisitions for a regional historical collection," Patrick said. "If anyone recognizes Harold's filing system, it'll be Francis." Amy's posture changed at the word acquisitions. "Call her," Wanda said. Patrick took out his phone. Amy held up one hand. "Not until the estate's attorney approves outside contact. They're my father's photographs. That's disputed now. Their ownership isn't established by standing in my mother's house." "Exactly," Amy said, "which is why you shouldn't invite someone to value them." Wanda turned to Zachary. "Are you forbidding Patrick from calling a woman who worked in this room? I'm asking everyone to slow down. There's water under the cabinet." "I see that." "No, you see boxes on tables. The next rain could reach the rest." Patrick had already found Francis's number. He held the phone without pressing it. Wanda took out the paper Zachary had brought. It was the buyer's offer. The property address was correct. The purchase price matched the listing. Beneath the description, one line included attached fixtures and any contents remaining at closing. "What happens if you accept this and I remove the studio contents within the 2 weeks you promised?" she asked. Zachary glanced at Amy. Amy answered, "We'll clarify the contents before closing." "Clarify with whom?" "The buyer." "You haven't clarified it with me, because you're making new claims every hour. I made one claim. The contents were given to me. And now you say the whole property is yours. I say there's a deed that needs examination." Zachary sat on the posing stool. The folded offer rested against his knee. "I'll ask the buyer to extend until Monday," he said. Amy turned sharply. "Why?" "So we can get a copy of the deed reviewed. They won't wait forever." I said Monday. It wasn't protection, but it was time. Wanda knew how rarely Zachary resisted Amy once she had converted a plan into paperwork. "Put the extension request in writing," Wanda said. He gave her a tired look. "You don't stop." "I used to." "That's how we got here." Patrick pressed Francis's number. The call went to voicemail. He left a short message saying Harold's catalog had been found, and several negative boxes were damp. He asked her to call him as soon as possible. Amy listened to every word. When Patrick ended the call, she pointed to the archival box index. "No documents leave this building." Wanda put the catalog back in its protective packet. "Then the building has to be made safe. That isn't the estate's responsibility until the deed is reviewed. It was the estate's responsibility yesterday. Yesterday we thought it was a tear down." The phone rang in Patrick's hand. He answered and put the call on speaker at Wanda's request. "Patrick," an older woman said, "tell me exactly what you found." He described the index sheets, the storage codes, and the matching glass plate. Francis was quiet for several seconds. "Harold told me he finished that catalog," she said. "He wouldn't tell me where he put it." Amy stepped closer. "Can you authenticate it?" Patrick asked. "I can compare the entries with work I managed and identify his numbering system. I'd need to see the originals." How soon? I can be in Hannibal tomorrow morning. Wanda looked at the buyer's deadline. Come, she said. Frances heard the strain in Wanda's voice before she recognized it. Wanda? Yes. Another brief silence followed. I'll come early, Frances said, and don't let anyone separate that catalog from the negatives. Amy looked at Zachary. The old photographs had acquired an outside witness, a professional purpose, and a deadline of their own. Amy leaned toward the phone. Before you come, you should understand that ownership is disputed, Frances answered without hesitation. Then I'll examine the catalog, not settle ownership. The estate hasn't authorized an appraisal. I didn't offer one. Patrick took the call off speaker. Wanda watched Amy process the distinction. Frances was willing to inspect Harold's work, but she would not give either side a conclusion they hadn't earned. Zachary folded the buyer's offer and placed it in his coat pocket. I'll be here tomorrow, he said. Nobody goes through anything before I arrive. You already went through the house, Wanda said. That was different. It usually is when you're the one doing it. He left to request the extension. Amy stayed long enough to photograph every box on the folding tables. She didn't ask permission. Patrick photographed her photographing them. By late afternoon, the rain had strengthened. Water ran down the outside studio wall and collected beside the foundation. The tarp kept the worst of it off the damaged roof, but a thin stream appeared behind the hallway cabinet. They moved the remaining dry boxes to the center of the room. Wanda could no longer close her right hand. Patrick noticed when she dropped a pencil for the third time. That's enough. We have one shelf left. I can lift them. You don't know where they go. You call the codes. I can still carry a box. That isn't the question. She disliked how closely his words resembled her own. She sat down, called the codes, and watched him work. At 6, Patrick left to collect plastic sheeting and dry blotting paper. Wanda tried to pay him for the supplies. Keep your money for the roof, he said. I don't accept open-ended favors. Then pay me when you know what you're protecting. She wrote the cost as a debt in her notebook anyway. That night, Wanda slept in the studio. She didn't trust the new front lock, and she didn't trust the rain. She unfolded an old canvas backdrop across the floor and used her winter coat as a pillow. The room was cold enough that her joints stiffened before morning. Twice she woke to check the buckets. At 4, a fresh leak began near the posing platform. She dragged an empty developing tray beneath it, then sat on the stool until the pain in her hands eased. She had wanted the house because it was home. By dawn, wanting it had become work again. Frances arrived before 8 in a dark wool coat and sensible shoes. Her silver hair was cut close around her face. She carried 2 flat cases and a canvas bag. Wanda recognized her from the Christmas cards, though the last time they had stood in the same room, Frances's hair had still been brown. Frances set down the cases and took both of Wanda's hands carefully. You're cold. The furnace heats the house better than the studio. Why were you out here all night? To keep the boxes dry. Frances looked at the buckets, the ceiling, and the canvas backdrop on the floor. Harold would be furious. With the roof, with all of it. She removed her coat and hung it on the same peg she had used years earlier. Patrick arrived a few minutes later. Zachary and Amy came through the outside door behind him. Amy held a folder. Zachary carried the new front door key, but no coffee. Frances didn't waste time on introductions. She asked Wanda to show her the catalog where it had been found. Patrick opened the drawer while Wanda explained the brass release and false panel. Frances examined the construction, then the contact sheet, then Harold's letter. When she reached the deed, she stopped. Where was this? In the same packet, Wanda said. Did you unfold it before Patrick photographed the cavity? After? Frances looked at Patrick. I have the sequence. And nobody removed it before the photographs? No. Amy stepped closer. You recognize the document? I recognize Harold's signature. That wasn't my question. Frances looked over her glasses. Then asked the question you mean. Is it valid? I'm not a title examiner. Amy pressed her lips together. Frances turned to Wanda. Do you remember him handing this to you? I remember now. Not all of it. I do. The room became quiet. Wanda held the edge of the work table. You were here? I came through the outside door while he was setting the camera timer. He told me to stay out of the frame. Did you read the deed? I saw the heading and the property description. Harold told me he was delivering it to you. I watched him place it in your hands. Zachary moved closer. Why didn't you say anything after he died? Because I believed Wanda had the document. I didn't. I know that now. Did Grandma know? Frances took her time answering. Harold intended to tell her after he was sure the delivery was complete. Elizabeth was frightened about money and repairs. He didn't want another argument before the paperwork was safe. Amy opened her folder. So you don't know whether Elizabeth accepted this. She didn't need to give Harold permission to convey property he owned. You said you aren't a title examiner. I said I'm not deciding validity. I know what I witnessed. Wanda looked at the contact prints again. Frances had been outside the frame, but she was no longer outside the event. Harold hadn't photographed a vague promise. He had made another person watch him carry it out. Why did he take it back? Wanda asked. You left when Elizabeth called. Harold put the deed in his desk and said he'd finish with you later. When I came back the next week, he said it was safe. You didn't ask where? Harold didn't answer questions he considered unnecessary. Patrick gave a quiet breath that might have been agreement. Frances placed the deed aside and opened the catalog. Her manner changed. She checked the paper, the handwriting, and the sequence of codes. Then she asked for 3 boxes from different parts of the index. Patrick brought them to the table. Frances selected entries she remembered from her years managing the studio. In the first box, she found riverfront plates from a commercial assignment. In the second, negatives from a factory closure. In the third, portraits of shop owners photographed in front of their businesses. The dates, subjects, and frame counts matched. She removed one glove and pressed her fingertips against the catalog cover. This is Harold's complete working index, she said. Complete? Patrick asked. As complete as anything he made. There will be missing or damaged frames, but the numbering runs across the years I managed. Amy looked at the rows of boxes. What's it worth? Frances closed the catalog. I'm here to authenticate the system and assess condition. You represent a collection that buys archives. I represent an institution that licenses and acquires rights. That doesn't mean I name a price while ownership is disputed. Could it be valuable? Yes. How valuable? Potentially enough to require professional handling, insurance, digitization, and a clear rights agreement. Amy's attention sharpened. Zachary looked less pleased than worried. Wanda asked the question that mattered to her. Can it pay for the roof? Frances looked up at the stained ceiling. Possibly. If the rights are yours, if enough material survives, and if your father's releases and records support use. Those are several large ifs. So, the catalog isn't money. No. It's work that may produce money. That sounded more honest than a promise. Frances inspected the damp boxes. Some envelopes had begun sticking together. She explained that heat would make the damage worse if moisture remained. The plates needed dry air, clean separation, and stable shelving. Moving them repeatedly would increase breakage. How long do we have? Wanda asked. For the wettest boxes? Today. For the room? Not much longer if that ceiling opens. Zachary looked at Amy. The buyer plans to demolish it. Maybe the safest thing is to move everything. Where? Wanda asked. We could rent storage. Ordinary storage can get hot and damp, Frances said. These aren't chairs. Amy opened the buyer's offer again. If the archive belongs to the estate can arrange professional storage. With what money? Wanda asked. Zachary's silence answered. There was no reserve for preservation. Elizabeth's final expenses had consumed most of the available cash. Zachary had hoped the sale would end the property's costs before another bill arrived. Frances repacked her cases. I can arrange temporary controlled storage for the most vulnerable plates, she said. Not as a donation and not as an acquisition. The owner would be responsible for transport and fees. The owner is disputed, Amy said. Then nobody can sign the storage agreement cleanly. The deed was more than a shield against the sale. Without established ownership, Wanda couldn't license the images, insure the archive, authorize preservation, or commit the house to repair. Every useful next step waited behind the same unanswered question. A section of ceiling paper tore loose above the hallway cabinet. Wet plaster dropped onto the empty bottom shelf. Everyone stepped back. The exposed wood beneath was dark. Frances looked at Wanda. That roof cannot wait for a title dispute. Wanda opened her notebook to the page where she tracked her savings. The amount left would cover emergency work, but not much lodging afterward. She had been saving it for dental work and the injections her doctor had suggested for her hands. She called the roofer who had patched the house the previous spring. He could send a crew that afternoon if she paid the emergency deposit herself. Zachary took her phone gently before she confirmed. You don't know if you own the building. I know the archive won't survive an argument. The estate might not reimburse you. I know. You need that money. I know that too. He handed back the phone. Wanda authorized the work. The decision emptied more than half of what remained in her savings account. It bought no ownership, no promise of reimbursement, and no right to sleep behind the new front lock. It bought a dry section of roof above Harold's records. The crew arrived after lunch. Wanda remained on the ground and directed them toward the weak decking Patrick had identified. She signed the work order with a swollen hand. Amy stood near the listing sign, talking quietly to Zachary. When she finished, Zachary came to the studio. The buyer extended until Monday, he said. Amy wants to accept today, subject to title review. What do you want? I want this finished. That isn't a decision. It's the truth. Wanda looked past him at the roofers carrying damaged wood down the ladder. Until that morning, some part of her still wanted Zachary to tell her she belonged in the house. She had treated his permission as if it could restore what his actions had taken. She no longer wanted permission. I'm not asking you to let me stay, she said. I'm going to establish what Dad gave me. Then I'll decide what happens here. Zachary looked toward Francis, the catalog, and the opened cabinet. And if the deed isn't valid, then I'll know what I'm deciding from. He left without answering. Wanda returned to the work table. Francis had opened a clean ledger and begun a condition list. Patrick was building temporary supports beneath the dry boxes. Tell me what needs doing first, Wanda said. Francis handed her a fresh pair of gloves. This time, Wanda didn't take them to save the house her family might allow her to occupy. She took them to preserve the house and work Harold had placed in her care. The gloves were one size too large. Wanda folded the cuffs back and began with the dampest box. Francis showed her how to lift each envelope from beneath, instead of pinching the top. Patrick placed sheets of blotting paper on the folding tables. They worked in rows, leaving space between items so air could move. By mid-afternoon, the room had stopped smelling wet. The roof crew replaced the worst section of decking and covered it with new membrane. The repair wasn't pretty, and it wasn't the permanent roof the building needed, but the bucket stayed dry when the next shower passed. Wanda checked everyone. Francis watched her move from bucket to bucket. You believe work only after you test it. I paid for work that failed before. I remember. You do? Your father once made a carpenter stand in the studio during a thunderstorm because he claimed a window didn't leak. Did it? Right onto the man's shoe. Wanda smiled. The expression felt unfamiliar on her face. They saved most of the damp envelopes. Several had stains along their edges. 2 glass plates were already cracked, and 1 image had begun separating from the glass. Francis placed those in a separate container. Can they be repaired? Wanda asked. Stabilized, maybe, not made new. Wanda wrote damaged beside each code. She didn't hide the losses or soften them. That was another habit she was finished carrying. When the last stamp box was empty, Francis compared the catalog against samples from every shelf. The numbering system held. She found Harold's corrections, job references, and notes about missing frames. This catalog is authentic, she said. I'll put that in writing. Amy wasn't in the room to hear it. Wanda didn't feel relief. She felt the next task become clear. I need 2 separate things from you, she said. 1 statement about the catalog, and 1 statement about what you saw when Dad handed me the deed. Francis studied her. I won't mix them. Good. The archive has value, but it doesn't prove the house is yours. I understand. And my seeing the delivery doesn't tell a court whether every legal requirement was satisfied. I understand that too. Francis gave a small nod. Then I'll write both. Patrick looked toward Wanda's notebook. What comes next? A title examiner. Wanda took out her phone and called the office listed on a county information sheet Patrick had printed. She explained that she had an original deed that did not appear to have been recorded, and that an estate was preparing to sell the property. The woman who answered asked whether the deed was signed, notarized, and delivered. It appears signed and notarized, Wanda said. There's a witness to delivery. Then you need a complete title examination. If the estate contests it, you may need a quiet title case. How soon can someone inspect the paper? There was an opening the following afternoon. Wanda booked it before asking the fee. When the woman told her, Wanda looked at the amount remaining in her savings. I'll be there, she said. After the call, she placed the original deed back in its sleeve. Patrick said, "I'll drive you. You have work. I can move it. I can drive. Can you grip the wheel?" Wanda looked at her right hand. The swelling had reached the base of her thumb. "I'll drive," Francis said. "Patrick can bring his photographs separately if they ask for them." Wanda wanted to refuse both. Instead, she wrote the appointment time in her notebook. All right. The word felt less like dependence when she had chosen the help and defined its purpose. Francis went through the dry shelves again. She selected 12 negative groups that represented different parts of Harold's work. They included riverfront businesses, factory crews, civic buildings, and portraits made inside the studio. "These will show range," she said. "For what?" "For a preliminary licensing proposal." Amy entered in time to hear the last word. What proposal? Francis didn't look up. A possible institutional license, assuming ownership and usage rights are established, through the estate, through whoever proves the right to grant it. Amy set her folder on the work table. Zachary is Harold's grandson. Yes, he has a family interest. That isn't the same as a documented right. You were willing to come here because Patrick called Wanda. I came because Harold's catalog was in danger. Amy turned to Wanda. You shouldn't negotiate anything until the ownership question is resolved. I'm gathering information. You're letting an acquisitions director select material, with me present, and without Zach. He was invited to stay this morning. He left. He has a job. So do I. Amy's eyes moved to the dry boxes, the new protective sleeves, and the condition ledger. The studio no longer looked like a room waiting for a trash container. Its contents had names, numbers, and witnesses. The buyer agreed to Monday, she said. That gives us 3 days. After that, Zach needs to make a decision. A title dispute won't disappear on Monday. No, but the buyer may. Then the buyer may. Amy stared at her. You're willing to lose a clean cash offer over a paper you forgot existed. I'm willing to find out what the paper means. And if it means the house is yours, then I'll decide whether it's for sale. Amy picked up her folder. You can't maintain this place. I maintained it while your name was on holiday cards. That's not fair. It's specific. Amy left without closing the door. Francis waited until her footsteps crossed the storage room. She'll want to know the amount. So do I, Wanda said. I can't make a binding proposal before a rights review. I can give you a conditional one based on the material I've confirmed. Would that create an obligation? Only if you accept later. The institution would fund catalog completion, high-resolution scanning, and conservation of selected negatives. In return, it would receive broad licensing access for a fixed term. Would I lose the originals? No. They would remain yours, subject to temporary conservation loans. And the house? Not part of the agreement. That mattered more to Wanda than the money. Frances opened her laptop on Harold's work table. She entered sample counts, condition notes, and the range of subjects. Patrick checked dates against the index. Wanda answered questions about model releases and account ledgers. The old accounts drawer contained more than receipts. Harold had kept signed permissions from clients, job contracts, and print orders arranged by code. Not every negative had supporting paperwork, but many did. Francis held up one folder. This is why the index matters. It connects an image to a job and a permission. Patrick found 3 more in the same sequence. The work took the rest of the afternoon. Wanda's hands worsened, so she stopped handling originals and read codes aloud. She hated the limitation less once she saw that directing the search was also work. Before leaving, Frances printed 2 pages on Elizabeth's fading printer. The text came out striped. She signed them anyway. The first page stated that Harold's catalog matched his known numbering system and multiple original negatives. The second described the deed delivery she had witnessed. Then she wrote a conditional licensing figure on a separate proposal. Wanda read it twice. $180,000? For a long-term license, provided the rights review is satisfactory, and the archive contains the volume the index represents. Patrick let out a low breath. Wanda sat down. The amount was twice the urgent restoration figure a contractor had once mentioned when she asked what it would take to make the house and studio sound. She had dismissed that estimate because the money might as well have been on the moon. Why would anyone pay that? She asked. Because your father documented Hannibal as work, not scenery, Francis said. He photographed people inside their businesses, crews on ordinary shifts, rooms before they changed, and buildings before demolition. The collection is broad, dated, and organized. My family called it junk. Your family didn't open the boxes. Francis slid the proposal across the table. This isn't a gift, Wanda. The institution expects access, publication use, and years of cooperation. You would have responsibilities. What kind? Completing inventory, approving conservation priorities, learning handling standards, answering questions, keeping the collection together. Wanda looked at the shelves. She had imagined saving the studio by hiring people to repair it. Francis was describing a future in which Wanda would work there, make decisions there, and be accountable for what survived. I won't accept anything until the house is settled, she said. That's the correct answer. They placed copies of the 3 statements in separate folders. Francis kept copies of her own work. Patrick saved photographs of the signed pages. Wanda put the originals with the deed and catalog in the locked compartment. Before Francis left, she handed Wanda a small humidity gauge. Set this on the middle shelf. Write the reading down, morning and evening. Wanda placed it exactly where Francis indicated. The first reading was high but falling. That was the visible result of the roof patch, the separated envelopes, and the hours of work. For the first time, the room was becoming safer instead of steadily worse. At dusk, Zachary arrived. Amy came with him. She walked directly to the locked equipment compartment beneath the posing platform. I want to see the proposal, she said. Wanda remained beside the humidity gauge. Ask Frances for her copy. She says the proposal is directed to you. It is. That archive came from my husband's grandfather. Yes. So, why is Zachary excluded? Because Frances hasn't decided family rights. She made a conditional proposal to the person named in the deed and letter. Amy looked at Zachary. Your mother is preparing to take the house and $180,000 while you settle Elizabeth's bills. Wanda saw the amount land on him. Until then, Zachary had treated the archive as a complication. Now, it looked like relief he might be denied. He turned to Wanda. If the deed holds, he said, you really think I get nothing? Wanda didn't answer the question he wanted. Do you believe the house is mine if the deed holds? That isn't what I asked. It's what everything else depends on. Amy placed her hand on the locked compartment. Then this is the target, she said. The deed, the archive, and the offer stay together until Zach's attorney decides how to claim his share. Wanda looked at Zachary. Is that what you told Amy? He rubbed both hands over his face. I told her I don't understand why Grandpa would leave everything to you. He didn't leave it to me after he died. The deed says he transferred the house while he was alive. You didn't know you owned it. That doesn't make you the owner. I'm his grandson. You're also my son. Neither one answers the title question. Amy kept her hand on the compartment. Family does answer the fairness question. Fairness didn't concern you when this was a teardown. We didn't know about the archive. That's what you mean by fairness? Zachary walked to the outside door. He seemed unable to stand near either woman without feeling pushed into a position. Amy thinks we can settle this without court, he said. Wanda waited. Amy removed a single page from her folder. The estate accepts the buyer's offer. You sign a release of any claim against the property and turn over the original deed. In return, Zachary will pay you $45,000 from the sale and archive proceeds. There are no archive proceeds. There will be if Frances's institution follows through. The proposal is mine to accept only if I prove control. Then we can structure it as a buyout of your claim. You're offering me the tear-down price for the house, the studio, and the archive. We're offering certainty. You're offering money you don't have from rights you say I don't own. Amy's expression tightened. It would be paid at closing. What if the institution won't license from the estate? We'll negotiate. You've already spent it in your mind. Zachary turned from the door. Mom, it's more than you have now. Wanda folded her arms because her hands hurt. It would pay for an apartment, he continued. You wouldn't have to carry this place. Is that what you think I want? I think you're 68 and slept on a studio floor last night. I slept there because you changed the lock. I was following advice. You made a choice. So are you. His voice rose on the last word. Then he lowered it, glancing toward the road. Wanda saw the fear beneath his anger. It wasn't only the property. A quick sale had become the answer to something he hadn't told her. What do you owe? She asked. Amy stepped in. That isn't relevant. It is if debt is deciding how my son behaves. Zachary stared at the damp marks on the old floor. "We got behind," he said. "On what? Cards. The home equity payment. Amy had a slow winter. Zach, I'm tired of pretending it's fine." Amy closed her folder. "We are managing it. We're moving balances around," he said. "The sale would give us breathing room." "How much of Elizabeth's estate did you expect?" Wanda asked. "Enough to catch up. You expected the house money. I expected something. Grandma told me I'd be taken care of." "When?" "I don't know. Over the years." Wanda recognized his answer because it resembled her own belief. Elizabeth had told each of them what made the moment easier. Wanda heard that the house would always be home. Zachary heard that he would be taken care of. Neither had asked Elizabeth to make the promise precise. Amy had filled the empty space with a listing agreement. Wanda picked up the buyout page. "If I sign this, you take the deed, sell the property, and claim the archive. We settle all disputes," Amy said. "And Patrick's discovery photographs, they become part of the estate record. Frances's witness statement, she can say what she remembers. It won't matter after you release the claim." Zachary came closer. "You'd have money and no repairs. I'd have enough for rent until it ran out. You could find somewhere smaller. This is my home. It may not be. That's why I'm going to the title examiner." Amy took the page back. "Then the buyout expires when you file anything in court." Wanda nodded. "That's clear." Amy had expected bargaining. The lack of it unsettled her. "Think about Zachary," she said. "I am." "No, you're thinking about your father. I can do both. If you cared what this fight does to him, you'd settle." Wanda's voice stayed low. "Caring for him doesn't require handing him whatever fear makes him reach for." Zachary flinched as if she had raised her hand. Amy gathered the offer, the proposed buyout, and Frances's copied condition statement. "Come on," she told him. He didn't move. "I'll meet you at the car," he said. Amy left. For a few seconds, mother and son stood among the labeled boxes. Wanda wanted to ask him to sit down. She wanted to make tea and tell him debt could be handled one bill at a time. That was how she had always responded to panic. She made the room quieter, took over the task, and delayed the question of who should carry it. Zachary spoke first. "I needed you to say no to her sometimes." Wanda looked at him. "When?" "All the time she pushed, the listing, the locks. Today. You're the executor. You're my mother. You wanted me to fight your wife so you wouldn't have to. I wanted you to understand. I do understand. That's the problem." He picked up the new steel key from the work table. "The attorney told me to secure the studio contents until the dispute is resolved, meaning only Amy and I will have access. You gave the contents to me. That was before the deed and catalog. The valuable things only belong to family when they're valuable." "Stop saying it like that." "How should I say it?" He walked to the outside lock. "Take whatever personal things you need. The deed goes to the examiner tomorrow, then it needs to be held by a neutral office. The catalog stays here?" "Yes." "And the negatives?" "Yes." "Who checks the humidity?" "I will." "You didn't know what the gauge was yesterday. Then show me." Wanda looked at him for a long moment. He wasn't asking to learn. He was preparing to remove her while assuring himself the objects would survive. Still, the plates couldn't pay for their quarrel. She showed him how to read the gauge, where to write the numbers, and which boxes needed daily inspection. She made him repeat the acceptable range. Patrick photographed the condition ledger before Wanda placed it on the middle shelf. When they finished, Zachary changed the studio's outer lock. Wanda stood in the yard with her suitcase, Harold's ring, the original deed, the contact prints, and copies of the catalog and letter. The old studio key no longer worked. Zachary handed her a written receipt, stating that the catalog and archive boxes remained inside. He had listed the numbers under Patrick's supervision. "This protects everyone," he said. "It removes me, temporarily. Give me a key." "I can't." She looked at the house. The funeral flowers were still visible through the front window. She had no key for that door either. "Where are you going tonight?" he asked. "I'll manage. I can book the hotel. I can book my own room. Mom." Wanda put the receipt into her notebook. "Send me photographs of the humidity reading at 8 each morning and 6 each evening." He nodded. "Including the ledger and the gauge in the same frame. I said I would check it. I said what I need." "All right." She lifted her suitcase into Patrick's car. Patrick had remained because Frances asked him to transport the discovery photographs to the title office. He didn't comment on the new lock. As they pulled away, Amy stood near the sale sign with her phone raised. She photographed Wanda leaving with the suitcase. Wanda saw her through the rear window. "What's she doing?" Patrick asked. "Making a record that the property is vacant." "Do you want me to turn around?" "No." "Photograph her photograph." Patrick stopped at the edge of the road and took one clear image through his open window. Amy lowered her phone. The hotel room smelled of bleach and old heating vents. Wanda paid for 2 nights because the title appointment and the Monday offer left no room for guessing. The charge reduced her savings again. She placed the deed inside the room, safe. The safe was barely wide enough, and she had to support the document sleeve with a hotel menu so it wouldn't bend. At 6, no photograph came from Zachary. She waited 10 minutes, then called. "I'm still at work," he said. "You said you'd check. Amy's going over. Ask her to send the photograph. She knows." At 6:40, Amy sent a picture of the gauge alone. No ledger appeared in the frame. Wanda replied, "Include both, as agreed." Amy didn't answer. The next afternoon, Francis drove Wanda to the title examiner's office. Patrick met them there with his camera files and printed photographs. The examiner worked at a broad table beneath white lights. She wore magnifying lenses over her glasses and asked them not to talk while she studied the deed. She checked the paper, ink, signatures, embossing, and seal. She compared the property description with the available title records. Then she reviewed Patrick's discovery sequence and Francis's statement. After nearly 2 hours, she removed the magnifying lenses. "I see no obvious defect in the original document," she said. Wanda didn't let herself move. "Does that mean I own the house?" "It means this appears to be an original deed executed by Harold Elliott and notarized on the date shown. Delivery is supported by Ms. Perry's statement and the photographs." "Then what's missing?" "The executor contests your claim, and the deed was not placed in the public record when it was delivered. A title company won't insure a buyer or you while those interests conflict. Can Zachary sell it Monday? He can accept an offer subject to resolving title. He cannot give the buyer clean ownership until this is settled." Amy's deadline had lost some force, but not enough. "What settles it?" Wanda asked. "A quiet title order, unless the estate withdraws its claim." Zachary would not withdraw. Amy had already made that plain. The examiner gave Wanda a written preliminary report. It confirmed the paper's apparent age, signatures, seal, property description, and the evidence of delivery. It did not declare her the owner. The next step required filing a case, paying fees, preserving the original, and appearing where Zachary could deny her claim in public. Outside, Francis waited beside the car. "You can still take the buyout," she said. "I know. If you file, the license proposal will be frozen until the order is final. I know that too. And the archive remains behind a lock you can't open." Wanda looked down at her hands. The right one was wrapped. The left had begun swelling from doing more work. Then she looked at the preliminary report. Harold's deed could protect the house only if Wanda was willing to place it under scrutiny. That meant the forgotten afternoon, her years of silence, her son's debt, and Amy's photograph of the suitcase could all be used to make her look confused or opportunistic. She called the office handling the filing. "My name is Wanda Elliott," she said. "I'm ready to proceed with the quiet title petition." When they told her the required payment, she closed her eyes once, then authorized it from what remained of her savings. The confirmation number appeared on her phone. The filing office sent documents for her to review that evening. She read them at the hotel desk with a towel wrapped around her right hand. The petition asked the court to determine whether Harold's deed gave her ownership, and whether Elizabeth's estate had any remaining interest after Elizabeth's lifetime occupancy ended. It didn't ask who had been kinder. That helped. Francis sat across from her, checking the language against her witness statement. "This says you didn't know where the deed was after Harold took it back," Wanda said. "I didn't." "Will that hurt me?" "It's the truth. That wasn't my question." Francis looked up. "A missing answer always creates room for somebody else's story. We close what we can with facts." Wanda understood. Patrick could prove where the deed was found. Francis could prove Harold had placed it in Wanda's hands. The examiner could assess the paper. None of them could replace the hours Wanda had lost from memory. "I should have gone back to the studio that afternoon," Wanda said. "You went where Elizabeth called you." "I always did." "Yes." Francis didn't excuse it. Wanda appreciated that. Wanda enlarged the picture. Beneath the gauge, the ledger showed Amy's handwriting instead of Zachary's. She called him. "I need you to check the boxes yourself." Amy checked them. You agreed that you would. They're fine. Did you enter the studio this morning? I had to get to work. Then don't tell me they're fine. He was quiet. The petition was delivered to the estate attorney, he said. I know. You filed against me. I filed to establish the title. I'm named. You're the executor claiming the property. You could have waited. For what? For us to work something out. Amy gave me a buyout that expired if I filed. That was a starting point. She called it certainty. Zachary lowered his voice. The buyer signed the contract. Wanda tightened her grip on the phone. You accepted? Subject to clear title, before the deed examination was complete. The contract can't close unless the estate owns the property. Then why sign it? Because if you lose, the sale moves forward. And if I win, the contract ends. He said it plainly. That was better than pretending the contract didn't pressure her. Send the morning photograph again tomorrow, Wanda said. Is that all you have to say? No, it's all I'm saying on the phone. She ended the call before he could return to the safer subject of her disloyalty. The title examiner completed her full report 2 days later. She asked Wanda, Francis, and Patrick to attend separately so each person's information could be recorded without borrowing language from the others. Wanda went first. The examiner placed the deed beneath a clear protective sheet. She showed Wanda the paper fibers under magnification and the impression made by the notarial seal. The materials are consistent with the execution date, she said. The signature matches known examples supplied for comparison. The notary's commission and seal format were active on that date. Could someone have made it later? I found no sign that happened. Could it be a copy? No. This is an original signed instrument. The answer removed one uncertainty. Harold's deed wasn't a reproduction or an unfinished draft tucked away among old papers. The examiner pointed to the property description. It describes the parcel at 214 Cedar Mill Road, including the house and attached studio. What about Elizabeth? Her reserved lifetime occupancy ended at her death. If the deed was validly delivered, no ownership interest passed from her estate because of that reservation. Then why do we need the hearing? Because I verify title evidence. I don't decide a contested legal fact. The court will consider whether delivery occurred and whether the estate has any competing interest. So, you can't settle it. I can tell the court what the paper is. You and your witnesses must establish what happened. That was authority in its proper place. It could confirm the rule and the evidence. It could not stand in Wanda's place and use them. Patrick entered next. He brought the camera files on 2 separate drives and the original memory card. The examiner reviewed the image information with him. Each photograph carried the date, time, camera serial number, and order of capture. The sequence began with the half-open drawer and loose sleeve. It continued through the removal of the sleeve, the measurements, the brass release, the false panel, the wrapped bundle, and Wanda opening it. There are no gaps where the deed appears before the cavity is opened? The examiner asked. No. Were you alone with the cabinet before Wanda arrived? No. I first opened the jam drawer while she was present. Did Amy Elliott instruct you to search it? She instructed me to clear equipment for a listing photograph. I stopped when I saw the film sleeve and brass release. Did Wanda direct you toward that drawer? No. Patrick sounded almost offended by the suggestion, which made Wanda trust his answer more. Frances went last. She described arriving at the studio on the delivery date, seeing Harold set the camera timer, hearing him identify the document as a deed to the Cedar Mill Road property, and watching him place it in Wanda's hands. Did you see Wanda accept it? The examiner asked. Yes. Did she refuse it? No. Did Harold take it back permanently? I saw him place it in his desk after Wanda went to assist Elizabeth. He said he would finish securing it. Later, he told me it was safe. The examiner assembled the report without adding an opinion about which family member deserved the property. Her final conclusion was narrow. The deed was original. Its paper, signatures, seal, and property description were consistent. The discovery photographs were sequential and time-stamped. Frances's statement directly supported delivery. Wanda paid the remaining fee. Her bank balance dropped below the amount needed for another month at the hotel. She moved to a weekly room at the back of the building because it cost less. The window faced a concrete wall, and the heating unit rattled each time it started. The quiet title hearing was set for 3 weeks later. The buyer agreed to wait, but the contract remained in place. Frances's licensing proposal remained frozen. Wanda's access to the studio remained revoked. Each morning and evening, she requested the humidity photograph. Amy sent most of them. Twice, no picture came until Wanda called Patrick and asked him to stand at the studio door while Zachary went inside. Patrick didn't enter. He simply waited outside until Zachary completed the task. That embarrassed Zachary, which made him angrier with Wanda. "You're treating me like I can't read a gauge," he said during the second week. "You're treating a promise like it counts when nobody checks. I'm not your employee. No, employees get clear duties and payment." He gave a short laugh without humor. "You've already decided I'm useless. I decided the archive needs consistency. That's the same thing to you." "It isn't." He looked tired. His beard had grown unevenly along his jaw. Wanda wanted to reach up and smooth his collar the way she had when he was young. She kept both hands around her paper cup. They were meeting in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby because Zachary refused to discuss the case inside the house. He slid a document across the table. It was an expanded settlement offer. Amy proposed that Wanda receive the same $45,000, keep selected family photographs, and be allowed one supervised day to remove personal belongings. In return, Wanda would dismiss the case, surrender the deed, and release any claim to archive proceeds. "Did you read this?" Wanda asked. "Yes." "Do you think it's fair?" "I think it ends the fight." "That isn't an answer." "It's the only answer I have." Wanda returned the paper. The examiner verified the deed. She verified the paper. "Amy says delivery can still be challenged because you gave it back." "I didn't give it back. I left it on the table to help your grandmother. You forgot it for 10 years. I forgot the document. I didn't forget what Dad wanted for the house. But you never told me you owned it. I didn't know the deed survived." Zachary leaned back. "Do you hear how that sounds?" "Yes." "It sounds inconvenient. It sounds like you found money and changed your memory." There it was. Amy had already taken the most painful version of the facts and made it usable. Wanda picked up her cup. Her hands were steady that day. "Will you say that at the hearing? If I'm asked, do you believe it?" "I don't know what I believe. You believe enough to sign a sale contract. I believe I have responsibilities. So do I." He stood. "If you go through with this, things won't go back to normal." Wanda looked at the settlement paper between them. "Normal is how you change my locks and called it procedure." He left the paper on the table and walked out. Later that afternoon, the lawyer preparing Wanda for the hearing asked whether she wanted to challenge Zachary's conduct as executor. Amy's brokerage commission, the early listing, the contract signed after notice of the deed, and the attempt to include the archive could all be presented as evidence of financial motive. Would it help prove delivery? Wanda asked. Not directly. It could affect how the court views their objections. Would Zachary's debt become part of it? Possibly. And Amy's business records? If we pursue that issue. Wanda thought of the photograph Amy had taken as she left with the suitcase. Amy would use humiliation as evidence if it helped her position. Wanda didn't have to answer in kind. "No," she said. "I want the deed examined. I want Patrick's photographs and Francis's testimony heard. I don't want their debts turned into a public punishment. They may use those same debts to explain their actions. They can explain themselves. The narrower approach gives up pressure. I know. It was the easier, cruel shortcut, and refusing it did not make the hearing safer. It only kept the question clean. That evening, Wanda asked Patrick to print one final set of the discovery images in order. Francis reviewed her statement aloud without changing a word. The original deed remained in a secured evidence sleeve at the examiner's office, ready to be produced in person. Wanda signed the final witness list. Her name stood opposite Zachary's on the hearing notice. Whatever the court decided, her son would remember that she had carried Harold's deed into a public room rather than surrender it to protect his expectations. She placed the notice beside her bed, set the alarm for the hearing morning, and accepted that proving ownership might cost the last version of their relationship that still depended on her silence. The alarm rang at 6. Wanda turned it off with the side of her hand and sat on the bed until her fingers loosened. She dressed in the black trousers she had worn to Elizabeth's funeral, a cream blouse, and the green cardigan. The jacket from the funeral still smelled faintly of lilies, so she left it in the closet. Francis arrived at 7. Patrick was already waiting in the hotel parking lot with his camera records in a hard case. Nobody told Wanda she would be fine. She was grateful for that. The hearing room was smaller than she expected. 2 tables faced a raised desk. A county map hung on one wall. The carpet had been worn pale between the door and the witness chair. Zachary sat at the other table beside the attorney representing Elizabeth's estate. Amy sat directly behind him. She wore a navy suit and held the same folder she had carried through every argument at Cedar Mill Road. Wanda looked at her son. He looked back, then lowered his eyes to the table. The title examiner placed the original deed in a clear sleeve before the hearing began. Patrick set his photograph case beside Francis's written statements. Every object had a place. Wanda wished people could be arranged as cleanly. The judge entered and asked both sides to state what they wanted. The estate attorney went first. The estate asks the court to find that the document was never effectively delivered and therefore did not transfer ownership. Elizabeth Elliot occupied, maintained, and held herself out as owner until her death. Her daughter did not record the deed, pay property obligations as owner, or assert ownership until valuable photographic materials were discovered. Wanda felt Amy watching her. The statement was careful. It didn't call the deed false because the examiner had removed that argument. It called Wanda's ownership unfinished. The judge asked whether the estate disputed Harold's signature. No. The notarial seal? No. The property description? No. Then the dispute is delivery? Yes. Zachary was called first. He sat in the witness chair with his hands clasped tightly. The estate attorney asked who had lived at Cedar Mill Road. My grandmother lived there. My mother lived with her and took care of her. Did your mother ever tell you she owned the property? No. Did Elizabeth Elliot behave as the owner? Yes. In what way? She made decisions about the house. She paid taxes from her account. She refused when people suggested selling. Amy shifted behind him. Did Wanda Elliot ever try to sell, mortgage, insure, or record the property in her own name? Not that I know. When did she first claim ownership? After my grandfather's cabinet was opened. The attorney handed him the buyer's contract. What had happened before that discovery? My wife listed the property. We received an offer. Was the listing based on the estate records available to you? Yes. Did your mother object before the photographs were taken? She objected to the sale. She said she expected to stay. But she did not produce a deed. No. Did she say she remembered receiving one? Not at first. Zachary looked toward Wanda. She said she didn't know what the paper in the contact prints was. The attorney let that answer rest. Then he asked about the archive. When did you learn the photographic negatives might have substantial value? After Francis Perry inspected them. And when did your mother refuse the estate's settlement offer? After the licensing proposal. There it was. The full false version had been built from facts placed in the most damaging order. Wanda found money, recovered a convenient memory, and used an old paper to take what Elizabeth had left behind. The estate attorney sat down. Wanda's lawyer approached Zachary. Who arranged the property listing? My wife. When? The day of the funeral. Was the reception still taking place? Yes. Amy's attorney objected to the relevance. The judge allowed one more question. Had the darkroom drawer been opened at that point? No. Thank you. Wanda's lawyer didn't ask about Zachary's debt. She didn't ask what commission Amy expected. Wanda had chosen the narrower case, and now she had to live inside it. Amy testified next about the listing. She explained that public information and estate documents led her to believe Elizabeth's estate controlled the house. She said Wanda had been offered time to remove personal belongings. She described the studio as neglected, wet, and unsafe. Did Wanda present any ownership document before Patrick Wells began photographing the property? The estate attorney asked. No. Did she claim the photographic archive before learning its potential value? She accepted the studio contents when we thought they were unwanted. Her position changed when Francis discussed licensing. Amy sounded reasonable. That was her best skill. She removed the speed, the locked doors, and the suitcase from the story, leaving only an orderly executor and a sudden claimant. Wanda's lawyer asked one question. Who hired Patrick Wells? I did? For what purpose? To photograph the property for my listing. And was that listing already active when he opened the drawer? Yes. Amy returned to her seat. The title examiner was called. She carried the deed to the witness table and described her examination in ordinary terms. The paper was of the expected age. Harold's signature matched accepted examples. The notarial seal was genuine in form and impression. The property description identified the Cedar Mill Road parcel. Nothing suggested later alteration. The estate attorney stood. Can physical examination prove delivery? No. So, the document's existence does not by itself establish that Harold Elliott completed the transfer. Correct. Can you say why it remained unrecorded? No. Can you say why Wanda Elliott did not possess it? I can describe where it was documented as found. I cannot explain her memory. The estate attorney sat down. Amy wrote something and slid it to Zachary's lawyer. The judge examined the deed. The reservation to Elizabeth Elliott, she said. Explain that. The examiner pointed to the relevant line. Harold conveyed the parcel to Wanda while reserving Elizabeth's right to occupy and use it for the remainder of Elizabeth's life. If the conveyance was delivered, Wanda received ownership subject to that occupancy. Elizabeth's continued residence would be consistent with the deed. Wanda saw Zachary lift his head. For the first time, the fact Elizabeth lived there did not support his version alone. The deed itself expected her to remain. Patrick took the witness chair. He gave his name, occupation, and connection to Harold's studio. He explained that Amy hired him for listing photographs. He had started outside, photographed rooms as they became available, and entered the studio with Wanda. Did Wanda direct you to the darkroom cabinet? Her lawyer asked. No. Why did you open the drawer? I was clearing surfaces for a wide room photograph. The drawer was partly jammed. I used the lifting motion Harold had taught me. What did you see? A loose film sleeve caught along the side, and a brass release that didn't belong to the normal drawer slide. What did you do? I stopped. Patrick described calling Wanda to the cabinet, photographing the drawer before removing the sleeve, and recording each later step. The printed images were laid out in order. The first showed the drawer partly open. The next showed the sleeve still caught inside. Another showed the contact prints of Harold handing Wanda a folded document. Then came the measurement of the shallow drawer, the brass release, the false panel, the waxed bundle, and Harold's handwriting across the tape. The final sequence showed Wanda opening the bundle and finding the deed. The judge studied the photograph timestamps. Were any images removed from this sequence? No. Did the deed enter the room from another source while you were present? No. Did you know what was inside the cavity before it was opened? No. The estate attorney asked whether Patrick was Wanda's friend. No. You assisted her with the leaking roof. I put a tarp over a damaged section after my listing work. You later helped preserve the negatives. Yes. So, your relationship changed. I learned the property contained work made by the man who trained me. That gave me an independent reason not to watch it be damaged. Patrick didn't look at Wanda when he answered. He didn't need to. Frances was the final witness. She described her years managing Harold's studio and her familiarity with his handwriting, numbering system, and work habits. She authenticated the catalog only long enough to explain why she had returned to Hannibal. Then Wanda's lawyer moved to the deed delivery. Were you present when Harold Elliott handed the deed to Wanda? Yes. What did you hear him say? He said the document transferred Cedar Mill Road to Wanda while protecting Elizabeth's right to live there. What did Wanda do? She accepted it. Did she reject it or return it? No. Elizabeth called from the house. Wanda placed it on the work table and left to help her. What happened then? Harold put the document in his desk for safekeeping. Did he say the transfer was canceled? No. Did he later refer to the document? He told me it was safe and that he had made a record of delivery. The estate attorney approached. You did not see Harold place the deed inside the cabinet cavity. No. You didn't tell Wanda where it was. I didn't know. You assumed she possessed it. Yes. Then for 10 years, nobody recorded it. That appears to be true. Isn't it possible Harold changed his mind? Possible is a large word. I saw no act or heard no statement showing that. He retained the original after delivering it for safekeeping. That is your interpretation. It is what he told me. Frances stepped down. Then Wanda was called. Her lawyer asked about the afternoon in the contact prints. Wanda told the truth without repairing the parts that made her look careless. I remembered standing at the table, she said. I didn't remember what the paper was until I read my father's letter and heard Frances describe the exchange. Why did you leave it? My mother called. A jar had broken in the pantry. Did you intend to reject the deed? No. Did you know Harold had placed it in the cabinet? No. Why didn't you claim ownership after his death? I thought he had taken care of whatever paper he showed me. I believed my mother when she said the house would remain my home. I didn't ask enough questions. The estate attorney stood for cross-examination. You paid repairs, but not as the recorded owner. Yes, you lived there because Elizabeth permitted you. I lived there to care for her, and because it was my home. You did not tell Zachary the house belonged to you. I didn't know the deed survived. You first made that claim after learning the archive might be valuable. No, I made the claim when I read the deed. We learned the archive's potential value later. Would you have filed this case if the archive were worthless? Wanda looked at Zachary. Yes. Why? Because the deed describes my home, not the price of the contents. The judge asked for the original. The examiner carried it forward. Under the bright hearing room lights, Harold's signature looked ordinary. That was the strange part. One man's familiar handwriting had outlasted funeral plans, a listing contract, changed locks, and every sentence Amy had arranged around it. The judge took a recess. No one spoke in the hallway. Amy stood beside a vending machine, reading messages. Zachary sat with his elbows on his knees. Wanda remained near Francis and Patrick, but didn't ask either of them what they thought. When everyone returned, the judge read the findings slowly. Harold had signed and acknowledged the deed. The property description was sufficient. His physical transfer of the deed to Wanda, witnessed by Francis and documented by the time photographs, established delivery. His later safekeeping of the original did not undo it. Elizabeth's lifetime occupancy explained her continued possession without placing ownership in her estate. The court confirmed title in Wanda Elliott. Elizabeth's estate had no ownership interest in the house or attached studio. The buyer's contract could not convey the property. Amy's listing could no longer offer it. Zachary's authority as executor did not reach it. There was no lecture and no punishment. The judge directed the order to be entered and the deed to be recorded with it. Zachary remained seated after the hearing ended. Amy closed her folder. For once, there was no revised page waiting inside. Outside the building, the title examiner returned the deed to Wanda's secured sleeve. Zachary approached with the plain steel ring in his hand. "The front and studio keys," he said. Wanda held out her palm. He placed them there without asking for anything in return. The metal was warm from his hand. Wanda closed her fingers around the ring. "I'll meet you at the house," Zachary said. "Amy, too?" He looked toward the parking lot. Amy was already walking to their car. No. Wanda didn't ask why. Francis drove her to Cedar Mill Road. Patrick followed with the discovery photographs. Zachary arrived 10 minutes later and parked beside the listing sign. The house looked the same. That surprised Wanda. She had expected ownership to alter the windows or straighten the porch. Instead, one gutter still sagged, and Amy's smiling photograph still faced the road. Zachary removed the sign first. The post had been driven deep into wet soil. He rocked it back and forth until mud loosened around the base. Then he pulled it free and carried it to the garage. Wanda unlocked the front door herself. The funeral flowers had turned brown at their edges. A sour smell came from the kitchen, where the covered dish still sat in the refrigerator. Amy had moved several chairs for photographs and never put them back. Wanda opened the windows. Zachary stood in the hallway. "The buyer's contract will be released today. The title condition protects the estate, so nobody owes the buyer?" "No." "And the listing?" "Amy withdrew it while we were driving." Wanda checked her phone. The page no longer showed active. Patrick had preserved the earlier versions, but she didn't need to keep looking at them. "The studio," she said. Zachary followed her through the storage room. The humidity ledger contained gaps. 2 evening readings were missing. The gauge remained within the acceptable range, but several boxes had been shifted. Who moved these? Amy wanted the numbers photographed. She opened them? I don't think so. That isn't enough. Wanda inspected every lid. No seals were broken. The catalog remained in the locked compartment, along with Harold's letter and the archive proposal. She turned to Zachary. "You don't enter this room without asking." "I understand." "Amy doesn't enter at all unless I invite her." He hesitated. "She's my wife. This is my studio. She'll take that personally. She made it personal before your grandmother was buried." Zachary looked at the floor. "I should have stopped the listing. Yes, I should have given you a key." "Yes." "I'm sorry." Wanda waited. He seemed to expect the words to change something because they were difficult for him to say. Take the new locks off, she said. Put Dad's brass locks back if they still work. He looked up. Today? You have the old hardware. In the garage, then today. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a task. Patrick placed the photograph case on the work table. I can help with the studio lock. No, Wanda said. Zachary installed it. Zachary can remove it. Patrick nodded once. Zachary found the old brass lock in a hardware store bag. One screw had been stripped during removal. He spent nearly an hour fitting the plate and repairing the damaged wood. Wanda watched the first 10 minutes, then returned to the archive. When he finished, he handed her Harold's original key ring. Test it, she said. The key turned smoothly. Zachary packed the new locks into their boxes. What do you want me to do with these? Take them home. He carried the boxes to his car. Amy arrived before he could leave. She remained on the gravel drive with her arms folded. Zachary walked out to speak with her. Their voices were low at first. Then Amy's rose. I'm not going inside, she said. Apparently I'm banned. Wanda came to the studio doorway. You aren't banned from my life, she said. You don't have business access to my house. I was doing my job. You listed property you hadn't verified. The record showed an estate asset. You kept pushing after the deed was found, because people produce old papers in probate disputes all the time. This one was valid. I know what the judge decided. Amy looked toward the missing sign. You got the house, you got the archive. Zach gets bills and funeral expenses. Zachary took responsibility for an estate. That doesn't make my property the payment. You could still license the photographs and help him. I may help my son if I choose. I won't buy a relationship with ownership. Amy gave a sharp, tired laugh. You make every boundary sound noble. No. Some boundaries are simply locks that work. Amy looked at Zachary. Are you coming? He glanced toward the garage. I need to return her tools. Do it another day. I said I'd do it today. He had not said that before, but Wanda let the sentence stand. Amy drove away alone. There was no apology from her. No sudden recognition softened her face. She believed speed had been practical, the listing had been reasonable, and Wanda's refusal to share was the greater betrayal. The court had changed Amy's access and commission. It had not changed the story Amy told herself. Zachary brought out 2 toolboxes, a circular saw, Harold's long level, and a set of socket wrenches. He had borrowed them over several years and left them in his garage. I forgot how much I had, he said. You remembered when I asked. I know. He placed each item where Wanda directed. The tools filled one shelf in the garage and part of another. When the last box was empty, Zachary sat on the porch step. Amy thinks I chose you. Did you? I chose to remove a lock from a house the court says is yours. That's not the same. He rubbed his palms together. I let her decide because she sounded certain. Every time I looked at the roof or the bills, I thought if we sold fast, nobody could ask why I hadn't helped more. Wanda sat on the step above him. You could have told me about the debt. I was ashamed. You were willing to make me homeless before you were willing to be ashamed out loud. His shoulders lowered. Yes. The admission didn't close the distance. It made the distance honest. I don't know how to fix this, he said. Start by going home and facing your own bills. That's it? No. That's first. He waited for another instruction. If you want to help here, I'll make a work list. You can take a job at a time. We agree on payment before you start. Payment? You owe money. I need repairs. I won't use free work to create another unspoken claim. You'd pay me to work on Grandpa's house. My house? He nodded. Your house? The correction was small, but Wanda heard it. Francis returned the following morning with the final archive agreement. The institution's rights review had accepted Wanda's control after receiving the title order, Harold's catalog and letter, Francis's delivery statement, and Zachary's written withdrawal of the estate's claim to the studio contents he had already given Wanda. The agreement offered $180,000 for the long-term license. Wanda read every page at Harold's work table. The institution would fund scanning and selected conservation. Wanda would retain the original negatives. She would provide scheduled access, maintain storage standards, and work with Francis to complete descriptions. Publication requests outside the agreement would still require review. This will take years, Wanda said. The first catalog phase will take months, Francis replied. After that, The work becomes regular rather than urgent. What if my hands get worse? You direct handling you can't safely perform. I don't want strangers deciding what matters, then learn enough to direct them well. Frances handed her a preservation manual with colored tabs along the edge. Wanda signed the agreement. The first payment cleared 3 days later. It didn't feel like a prize. Most of it already had a purpose. A contractor inspected the house, studio, drainage, wiring, floor supports, and roof. He returned with a written urgent restoration figure of $92,000. Wanda sat at the kitchen table and went through it line by line. The permanent roof accounted for the largest portion. Studio drainage, floor repair, safe electrical service, and climate control followed. Patrick read the section about the darkroom. They want to remove the cabinet during floor repair. No, they can't repair beneath it without moving it. Then we move it intact and document every step. Where? The front studio wall is dry. It'll need a platform. Build one. Patrick looked at her over his glasses. You're hiring me now? Yes, for photography or carpentry. Both, if you price them separately. He smiled. Harold would approve. He isn't paying the invoice. Patrick wrote one. Zachary accepted the first paid repair job 2 days later. Wanda gave him the garage gutter and downspout, not the roof, not the archive room, and not a key. He arrived at 8 with his own ladder. He showed her the materials receipt before opening a package. He finished before lunch, cleaned the gutter debris from the yard, and asked Wanda to inspect the slope. Water from the hose ran cleanly through the downspout and away from the foundation. What's next? He asked. I'll call you. He wanted a warmer answer. Wanda could see it. All right, he said. She paid him the agreed amount. He folded the receipt and placed it in his wallet rather than refusing the money for effect. That afternoon, Wanda unpacked the suitcase she had carried from the hotel. She returned her medicine to the bathroom, hung the green cardigan in the bedroom closet, and placed Harold's contact prints in the studio cabinet. The suitcase itself remained open on the bedroom floor. Home had been restored on paper and through a key. Trust, health, and the damaged rooms would require their own work. Wanda closed the suitcase 4 days later and carried it to the top shelf of the bedroom closet. By then, contractors had marked the studio floor with chalk. The damaged section extended beneath the darkroom cabinet and halfway toward the hallway wall. Patrick built the temporary platform against the front wall. He measured it twice, then asked Wanda to check it. The right corner is high, she said. It's less than 1/8. It'll throw the drawers. He adjusted it. Moving the cabinet required 4 adults, padded straps, and a clear path. Wanda didn't lift. She stood beside the work table with Patrick's camera and called each step. Stop. They stopped. Left side first. They raised it 1/2 inch, cleared the soft floor, and lowered it onto a wheeled base. Patrick photographed the cabinet before, during, and after the move. The false back drawer remained empty. Harold's deed had been recorded with the court order, and the original rested in secure storage. The catalog was being scanned under Frances's supervision. Once the cabinet reached the platform, Wanda tested every drawer. The upper one caught at the same familiar place. Lift the right corner, she told Patrick. He did, and it opened. The floor work began the next morning. Restoration didn't happen in a clean sequence. The electrician found an overheated wire behind the darkroom wall. The drainage crew uncovered a crushed pipe beside the foundation. New roof, flashing exposed rotten trim that hadn't been included in the first estimate. Each discovery required a decision and another signature. Wanda kept the total within the $92,000 restoration plan by postponing cosmetic work. She repaired structure, water control, wiring, heat, and safe access first. The faded dining room wallpaper stayed. So did the scratch near the front door, where Harold once dragged a tripod inside during a storm. Her hands limited every day. She wore soft braces in the morning and soaked her fingers in warm water at night. On good days, she labeled sleeves and entered catalog notes. On bad days, she dictated while Frances typed. The first time Frances corrected her handling position, Wanda bristled. I'm supporting the plate. You're supporting the center. The edge is safer. I watched Dad do this for years. He also smoked in the darkroom for 20 of them. We aren't preserving every habit. Wanda moved her hand to the edge. Frances smiled. There you are. They worked through one cabinet at a time. Wanda learned to measure humidity, identify image separation, and distinguish dust from mold without touching either. She didn't hand the archive over and disappear. She became the person who approved each conservation group. Patrick returned twice a week. He photographed damaged materials, built shelving, and restored one of Harold's old portrait lights with modern wiring. He submitted invoices exactly as Wanda requested. "You charged me 40 minutes for tea," she said one afternoon. "I was discussing shelf placement. You were eating ginger cookies. I can revise it. Do." He removed the 40 minutes. The next invoice included a separate line for shelf planning and no cookies. Zachary completed the garage gutter, the back steps, and 2 sections of porch rail. Each job began with a written scope and ended with an inspection. He brought receipts. He returned unused materials. He didn't enter the house unless Wanda opened the door. On his 4th job, he found rot beneath a porch post. The old Zachary would have covered it, finished the visible rail, and hoped the post lasted. He called Wanda outside. "This changes the price," he said. "I can stop here, or I can replace the post. You should decide before I open more." Wanda examined the wood with a screwdriver. "What will the post cost?" He showed her the figures. "Do it." He finished 2 days later. The porch settled level. Wanda paid him the revised amount. He folded the check, but didn't put it away. "Amy says, taking money from you makes this worse. Then don't take the job." "I did the job." "Yes." He placed the check in his wallet. At the end of the first month, he told Wanda that he and Amy had met with a debt counselor. They had closed 2 cards, canceled a planned trip, and put their second vehicle up for sale. Wanda listened without offering money. "I thought you'd say something," he said. "What do you want me to say?" "That we're doing the right thing. You're doing necessary things. Keep doing them." He nodded. It wasn't the comfort he wanted, but it was respect for an adult decision. Amy stayed away. She sent one message asking whether the archive agreement had closed. Wanda replied that it had. Amy didn't ask to visit or congratulate her. Months later, when the studio opening was announced, Zachary asked whether he could bring Amy. "She can come during the public hours," Wanda said. "Not with me. She can come with you. She can't enter the workroom or discuss selling, licensing, or managing anything. She knows the house isn't for sale. I knew I lived here. That didn't stop her from listing it. She's still angry. She's allowed to be angry somewhere she doesn't control." Zachary looked at the newly repaired porch. "I don't know if she'll come. That's her decision." Amy did come. She arrived beside Zachary 10 minutes after the doors opened. She paused near the place where her listing sign had stood. The grass had filled in, though a faint square of bare soil remained. Inside, she signed the visitor book like everyone else. Wanda greeted her without an embrace. "The public room is through there," she said. Amy looked toward the locked archive workroom. "I understand." It wasn't an apology. It was compliance, and for that day, compliance was enough. The portrait room held Harold's restored posing stool, a plain gray backdrop, and Patrick's repaired light. Framed reproductions from the archive hung along one wall. Each label named the people, place, and date when known. Empty spaces remained where research was incomplete. Francis stood beside a riverfront photograph, explaining how the buildings had been identified. Patrick adjusted a camera for the first scheduled portrait. The sitter was a retired baker who wanted a good photograph for her grown daughters. She arrived in a red coat and apologized for being nervous. "So am I," Wanda said. "You own a portrait studio. I own several light stands. That isn't the same thing." Patrick laughed from behind the camera. Wanda positioned the posing stool and asked the woman to turn slightly toward the window. She noticed how the red coat reflected warmth into the sitter's face. "Leave the coat on," Wanda said. "It suits you." The woman relaxed. Patrick took the first frame, then invited Wanda to take the second. Her right hand couldn't manage the smaller controls comfortably, so he set the camera on a tripod with a larger remote button. Wanda pressed it. The shutter clicked through the room. Afterward, they displayed both images on a monitor. The woman chose Wanda's frame. "Your father taught you well," Patrick said. "He taught me to wait until a person stopped posing." The studio took on a regular schedule. Portrait appointments filled 2 afternoons each week. The local history room opened 3 mornings. Francis organized monthly catalog sessions. Patrick taught an evening workshop for adults who wanted to preserve family photographs without damaging them. Wanda kept 1 full day closed. On that day, she rested her hands, paid bills, and ate lunch at her own kitchen table without explaining her schedule to anyone. The house changed around the work. the repaired roof held through spring storms. Water moved away from the foundation. The studio floor stayed dry. New wiring powered the lights without warming the walls. The furnace reached the portrait room on cold mornings. Wanda chose warm cream paint for the public room and left the darkroom cabinet in its original finish. Scratches remained along the drawer fronts. Patrick offered to sand them. "No," she said. "They show where hands went." He left them. Zachary's work continued after the urgent repairs ended. He called before each visit. When he needed access to the garage, Wanda gave him a work key attached to a large wooden tag. He returned it before leaving every time. One Saturday, he finished repairing the kitchen window that had rattled for years. Wanda made soup while he replaced the sash cord. "Grandma used to stuff a towel along this edge," he said. "She said repairs cost too much. You paid for half of them anyway." "More than half." He looked down from the ladder. "I know that now." They ate soup at the kitchen table. Zachary washed both bowls before he left. He didn't ask whether he would inherit the house someday. Wanda didn't offer an answer. By late autumn, the first group of archive scans was complete. Francis brought printed proofs and spread them across Harold's work table. River crews, shopkeepers, factory workers, wedding couples, and families looked back from ordinary days they hadn't known would become history. "The institution wants another year of catalog sessions," Francis said. "Same terms?" "Same terms. Put it in writing." Francis did. At the next public opening, people brought names for several unidentified faces. Wanda wrote each possible identification in pencil until it could be confirmed. She had learned not to turn memory into fact, simply because it felt right. Near closing time, Amy approached the work table. "I recognized the grocery clerk in that picture," she said. "My mother used to know her. Write the name and how she knew her." Amy filled out an identification card. Before leaving, she placed it in the review box instead of taping it directly to the photograph. That was the first useful thing she had done in the studio without trying to control the result. Wanda didn't praise her. She thanked her the same way she thanked every visitor who contributed a name. Winter came. The house remained warm. The old suitcase stayed on the closet shelf. Wanda no longer checked whether it was there before sleeping. If stories about reclaiming dignity after family abandonment matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. One evening, after the last portrait appointment, Zachary swept the studio floor while Wanda covered the camera. He returned the work key and waited beside the connecting door. "Soup next Saturday?" he asked. "Come at noon." "Should I bring Amy?" "If she wants to come as family, yes. Not as an agent, I'll tell her." He left through the front door. Wanda heard him test the porch rail before walking to his car. Patrick had already gone. Francis's condition ledger rested on the archive shelf, complete through the evening. The humidity gauge showed a safe reading. Wanda switched off the portrait lights and carried 2 clean cups into the kitchen. The house beyond the connecting door held the low sounds of ordinary occupation, the furnace starting, a clock above the stove, water settling in the pipes. She returned to the darkroom cabinet and checked the upper drawer. The contact prints lay in a label sleeve beside a copy of Harold's letter. The brass release moved cleanly beneath her thumb. Wanda closed the repaired darkroom drawer as warm light from the occupied house fell across Harold's old work table.